call the meeting to order here of the annual town meeting of the town of Rutland here at the Rutland High School. At this time, I'd like our town clerk to read the warrant.
To either of the constables of the town of Rutland and the county of Worcester, in the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you are hereby directed to notify and warn the inhabitants of said town, qualified to vote in elections and in town affairs, to meet at the Wachusett Regional High School Auditorium at 1401 Main Street in the town of Holden on Saturday, the 5th day of June 2021 at 6 o'clock in the evening, then and there to vote on the following articles.
Thank you, Leader. At this time, would everybody please rise and have a salute to the flag? The flag is over here to our right. At this time, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please stay standing. We're going to have a invocation at this time by the Director of Christian Education at St. Patrick's Church, Chris Mulcahy. Chris?
Good evening. It's an honor to be here tonight. Loving Father, first thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today for your many and abundant blessings, including the beginning of a return to normalcy in our world. We come to you this hour asking for your blessing and help as we gather together tonight. We pray for guidance in the matters at hand and ask that you would clearly show us how to conduct our meeting tonight with a spirit of mutual respect and unification to the common goal of the best decisions for our town of Rutland. Guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness as well as unbiased thought and speech. Thank you for your guidance and blessing tonight. Amen.
Seated.
I have a question. If you push the wrong button or you change your mind, can you cancel it out and change it?
Yeah,
Can?
until he closes the vote.
Okay. So the question was asked, if you vote and you vote yes and you change your mind before ballots is closed, then if I haven't declared the ballot box closed, you can just push a different one. And if you voted yes and want to vote no, then you can just hit the red one. And the second push will supersede the first one. And that will be counted. You won't be counted twice. It will go to that from my technical people to the left. So everyone understands about the ballots that we're voting. And you heard a question about if you change your mind, you can vote until I close the ballot box. Our guests are over here to our left of non-Rutland residents that can vote. Everybody else that should be in front of us should have a ballot to physically do that. We have two mics at either end of the aisle if you'd like to discuss an article. Once we open up discussion, I prefer you to proceed down closer to the mic to help save some time on open discussion, please. When you come up to discuss, you'll have to state your name and address for the town clerk to put on there. To my right-hand side is my finance board members, and the chairman of the evening is Karen Noel. Beside her is Darren Ross. Beside Darren is Tommy Richala, and beside Tommy is Pete O'Malley. I'm going to go with Pete, but I'm just going to stop there. On my left-hand side, we have Town Clerk, Anita Carlson. Beside Anita is Town Council Goldberg. Beside Lauren is town administrator, which is Ron. Something like that. beside Ron is chairman of the Rutland.
For city.
City.
2 Italians in a row.
I could be in trouble, but at least I know now to stop before I get it wrong. Beside Mitch is Skip Clark. Beside Skip is Leah Whitman. Did all right tonight. Beside Leah is our newest elected to the board, Carol Bryant. And beside Carol is Linda. I knew it must have been Pete today. I'm really sorry, folks. I usually do better than this. We also have our assistant town clerk up here, kind of controlling the mothership of the computer, and that is Damien up there. And then we have our team of people that are helping with everything else to keep everything going. So without any further ado, we're going to try to do that. And maybe folks, just FYI regarding the mask, we do not need to have masks on in the building. If you want to have a mask on to feel safer, you're more than welcome to do it. But those that choose not to have a mask on, you do not need a mask on. So feel free to be safe and be able to see clearly without your mask on. So at this time, we'll start with Article 1. Article 1, to hear the annual report of the town offices and committees.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote the annual reports of the town officers and committees.
Motion is made and seconded. Recommendation for finance, please.
Finance Committee recommends favorable.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Hearing none, all those in favor, please hit your green button. Anyone opposed, please hit your red buttons. Folks, the town report is available on the town website if you'd like to go there and look at it.
Randy, he's turned off after a while. He must have a battery saving.
Okay? So, it was just brought to my attention. If you don't see anything lit up on here, you just gotta make sure you turn it back on because it may go into a battery save mode. Physically do it. It's all those valid who wish. I declare the ballot box now closed. The motion passes favorably at 132 yeses, 5 noes, 1 abstain. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 2. See if the town will vote to transfer a sum of money from free cash in the amount of equal to that closed out to the general fund as of June 1, 2021 from the then existing separate water enterprise fund and sewer enterprise fund to the newly established combined water and sewer enterprise fund consistent with the direction from the Massachusetts Department of Revenue, MADOR regulations for taking action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $67,237.40, an amount equal to that closed out to the general fund as of July 1st, 2020, from the then existing separate water enterprise fund and sewer enterprise fund to the newly established combined water and sewer enterprise fund, consistent with the direction from the Massachusetts Department of Revenue, MADOR regulations.
Second.
A motion made and seconded. Recommendation of finance, please.
The Finance Committee recommends favorable.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Hearing none, make sure your voting thing is still on. All those in favor, please vote yes. All those opposed, please vote no. All those voted who wish, declare the ballot box closed. closed. 138 yeses, 7 noes, 3 abstain. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 3. To see if the town will vote to fix the salaries or compensation of elected town officers for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021, in accordance with Section 108, Chapter 41 of the General Law as amended or taking action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to fix the salaries or compensation of elected town officers for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021, in accordance with Section 108, Chapter 41 of the General Laws as amended, as set forth in the column entitled Finance Committee Recommended, provided, however, that $3,078.11 of the salary set for the town clerk shall be expressly contingent upon approval by the voters at an election of the override question, allowing the town to raise funds outside of the limit imposed by Proposition 2.5, so-called, for the fiscal year 2022 Wachusett Regional School District operating assessment. All as follows.
Yes, please.
The moderator, Finance Committee recommended is 75, failure of the override is 0. Selectmen, Finance Committee recommended is 3,000, failure of the override is 0. Town Clerk, Finance Committee recommended is $72,412, failure of the override is $69,333.89. Assessors, Finance Committee recommended is $1,500, failure of the override is 0. Board of Health is $750, and failure of the override is 0. Planning Board is $2,500, failure of the override is 0.
Second.
Karen, can you just break down the amounts? You took like the selectmen, their total salary, can you break it down by the numbers or?
Okay, so selectmen get paid $600 each, assessors get paid $500 each, Board of Health gets paid $250 each, and Planning Board gets paid $500 each, if the override passes.
Does everyone understand what the motion is making?
Didn't we already vote on the override? It was a ballot question.
Ron or?
Well, I'll speak. I'm pretty loud, so I think you can hear me. As you may recall, at the last election, the town had an override question for $500,000 on the ballot. The Board of Selectmen, they put out a notice asking people to vote against it because the school district changed their number. They reduced their budget by $192,000. Therefore, money could be restored to the budget. The $500,000 override question was incorrect and not accurate. A new override question will be on the ballot at a special election coming in June 28th, I think? June 28th, for an amount of $300,000. And those cuts and those discussions will come up further when we get into the budget discussion.
So you don't like the figures, so you just throw that vote away?
I'm sorry, say that again?
What we voted on, you just throw that away?
Well, that vote was for $500,000, so people voted no to the $500,000. The new vote will be for $300,000, and the citizens will have an option if they want to vote for that or against that.
Everyone has heard the motion that the finance chair has made. It's been seconded by Peter. I'm going to ask for recommendation of the finance board. Recommendation of the finance, please.
Finance Committee recommends favorable.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Please go to Mike. Thank you.
Sean Moore, 3 Avenue. Just to be clear, it's how this goes. If we vote in favor of the town gets to keep their salaries and their stipends and stuff, is that how it's saying? So
The override will need to pass in order for the stipends to be seen.
So we would want a yes, if you want that to happen on the vote.
Override on the 28th will need to pass.
Oh, 28, okay, I get it.
Yes.
Okay, so, again, I'm sorry, what are we voting for right now? Put that on the ballot?
No, what we're voting here is, right now, we're saying, we're trying to get this so it's one meeting. So what we're saying is, the Finance Committee recommends a certain amount, And then we say, if the override fails, then here's the new amount. So this way, we do one meeting, we're one and done, instead of having to come back to discuss it later.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
So, Karen, just to simplify that, okay? So a yes vote, if folks vote yes right now, the elected town officials are going to get their above zero salary. If it passes on the 28th. Correct. If they vote, if you folks vote no right now, if you vote no, then the 28th is irrelevant on that salary, is that correct?
Then that means we don't have a budget to run the town.
So I'm trying to simplify it, I'm not trying to confuse you folks. So a yes vote on this particular question, right, then elected committees will get their salary above zero. If you vote no, then they're not going to get their salary, and we don't have the budget. Is that what you said?
Everything is contingent upon the override for the stipends to go back and for Anita's salary to go to the correct amount. Override has to pass.
If I may, I think what this is voting this forward affords the town flexibility. If the override passes, all the elected positions as shown in the first column will receive that number. And if the override fails, all of those positions for the elected officials besides the town clerk will be cut of the budget. What this does is you're not voting to pay anyone or not to pay someone. You're just voting to provide flexibility to FinCom in the budget in the case that the override either passes or fails. So we're not voting to pay or not pay anyone right now. We're just voting to provide flexibility in case this is the override. Karen, is that fair?
Thank you. That was simple as I was trying to make it simple. Does everyone understand what Mitch just said? Makes no sense to you. Mitch, can you explain it a little bit?
Okay, so we have an override vote coming up at the end of the month. If the override fails, we obviously have to make budget cuts, right? If the override passes, we still make cuts, but they'll be lesser, to a lesser extent. So this item we're voting on is not to allocate any funding to anyone. It is merely to provide budgetary flexibility in the instance of the override failing or passing, so that finance committee does not have to reconvene another meeting.
Hopefully that helps.
Yes.
Karen, is that?
Yes.
You have a question?
Sharon Hamer, 1 Olivia Lane. I'm a little confused. It seems that if we vote no tonight on this question, we're still going to ask for a $300,000 override, part number 1, yes?
It's already on the ballot, yes.
Okay, it's already on the ballot. So, come June 28th, if we vote yes on that override, theoretically, we now have the money for this, so then we can reallocate. So it doesn't really matter how we vote on this tonight, because after June 28th, if it passes, we can still allocate the money toward the stipends.
No, if we vote no, we have to come up with a new budget, because this just provides flexibility for the budget process.
If you vote no, they will not get the raise, they will not get the money. If it goes down again, I'm talking about at the ballot.
Okay, so then what happens on June 28th if we vote yes? Where does that money go?
Lauren, probably maybe we should do a little different perspective.
This article actually doesn't appropriate any money, it just sets the salaries of the elected officials. It's required that it be done specifically, and so rather than have to come back and set it a different time, what the motion said was, if the override passes, we want to give these people the amount of money that were mentioned. If it fails, we're going to give everybody nothing. We're going to set their salaries at 0, except for Anita's at the number that was read. And that you're going to hear that all night long, because the budget that's being presented includes those amounts that the town wants to continue to, that the town wants to be able to spend. If you say no, on the budget part, if you say yes on the budget, and then the voters vote no at the polls on the override, we'll just have the lower numbers with all of the FinCom cuts already in front of you. So,
That makes sense to me. The yes part is the problem to me. What happens to the $300,000 if we vote yes, and all the things here today have been turned down? For example, the school budget.
Mr. Moderator, because it's an override, what the DOR will look at is the first dollar spent for the purpose. And then, so if there was a particular amount allocated for the schools and how much is spent, then there would be an override amount. However, it would not have been spent by you all. And that's the thing, town meeting controls how much money is being expended. The override just allows more money to be raised by taxes, it allows it, but you all decide how much of that you're going to spend and therefore how high your taxes are going to be. So if you disapprove the entire override stuff and you vote the finance committee recommended budget with cuts, even if the override passes, it won't cause you to incur any additional taxes because you won't have spent that money. What you're doing tonight is spending the money.
Did that help?
The only thing, the only thing that is, whatever we do tonight is contingent on the vote on the 28th. And what we're doing in this meeting is we're setting these values, people's salaries and things like that, but everything is contingent on the vote on the 28th. Just so everybody understands that.
Is there any other discussion? Is there any other discussion? Turn up the mic. You have to speak louder, it's on.
Desiree Bingham, 10 Hours Drive. I have a question about how these taxes actually work because what if inflation begins as we're looking at the national economy, and this is something that's coming up as our house prices rise anyway? Doesn't our tax money to the town increase as the assessment on our homes increases, and as Rutland is trying to also improve the town, that'll help our houses to also increase in the assessment, which means our taxes are going to raise by 2.5% or so anyway.
Lauren, you help with that?
Certainly, Mr. Moderator, through you. The amount of taxes the town can raise is limited by what everyone knows as Proposition 2.5. If you think about the levy, what you can raise, Proposition 2.5 moves that amount up every year by 2.5% plus new assessed values, okay? So if this is how much we can spend this year, this is how much we can spend next year, and this is how much we can spend the year after. But we don't have to spend all of that. And so that amount that you vote to appropriate is the amount that creates the taxes.
So if I could, Mr. Moderator, your question of inflation though, it doesn't matter because the valuation of the property is set at a specific date and time. So it doesn't matter if your property goes up and down later. When the tax rate is set at that specific valuation of the property at that time. So if the inflation goes up or down throughout the year, it doesn't matter. It's done every year, once a year, at a certain point in time.
So our taxes are reassessed every year?
Every year, the property values of your houses are determined, and that's how they calculate the levy rate. Right? So every year, once a year, they don't evaluate your house all throughout the year. They only do it at one point every year.
Okay, so if next year my house increases in value by 50,000, that means my taxes, my property taxes also increase by about that same ratio.
But again, it depends because it's on every property. So every year, every property changes. There'll be growth, there'll be all factors in it. So it's hard to say how that will determine depending upon what happens with everybody's non-property and not just yours. But yeah, it is based upon the total valuation of all the properties.
So my next question is, because, what was it, a year ago, we voted to decrease the building in our town, that means the supply for houses is decreased, the demand for houses is increased, which means the prices of home is going to be at a higher rate. If I were to sell my house right now with 5 people in line to buy it, and I could sell it in a couple days, that means my house, probably almost every home in the town could have increased by quite a bit just because we have so much demand on homes right now. I was reading an article a little while ago that people will come in and pay cash for their house and we can sell it, and then there will be, 18 people in line to buy your house. So I would assume that every home, you could assume that most homes in Rutland are going to increase in their assessed value over the course of the next 3 or 4 years anyway, whether we pass this levy or not at the end of the month.
Let
Does
me
that
try
make
to
sense?
explain as simple as I can. Sort of a complex question. So regardless of what the value of your house is a certain rate, it's assessed right now at a certain point in time, right? It doesn't matter what you sell your house at, it has nothing to do with the assessment or taxes at all. Okay? But at the end of next year, when you do a reevaluation of all the properties, they'll look at the total pound value of all the properties. And then if everybody's property went up, probably the tax rate will go down to offset that. If expenses and money doesn't change, your taxes will go up. Your assessment will go higher, so the tax rate will end up going down, because unless you spend money, it stays equal. You know what I mean?
So that's how that works.
Yeah, it spreads out as your property value goes up and down, the tax rate goes up and down to adjust for it. And the tax rate only goes up if you spend more, you know what I mean? It's really factored on how you spend, not on the value of the property. It's really calculated against the expenses.
Thank you, that answers my
Does that make
question.
sense?
Thanks.
Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion? Does everybody understand what they're voting on? We're voting on Article 3. All those in favor, please hit the green button. All those opposed, please hit the red button. All those voters who wish, I declare the ballot box closed. $151 people voted, 119 yeses, 26 noes, 6 abstained. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 4. See if the town will vote to raise such sums of money as may be necessary to defray the expenses of the municipal departments for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021, and to determine whether the town will appropriate money therefore to be provided by taxation or by appropriation from available funds, and further to determine whether said appropriation or any proportion therefore shall be contingent upon approval of an election of Proposition 2.5 override question or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to appropriate $9,078,265 to defray the expenses of municipal departments for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021. All as set forth in the budget document in the column entitled FinCom Balanced Budget with Override, providing, however, that the sum of $237,872.42 in the amounts and for the purposes listed in the column entitled FinCom Recommended Override Amounts shall be expressly contingent upon approval by the voters and an election of the override question, allowing the town to raise funds outside of the limit imposed by Proposition 2.5, so-called, for the fiscal year 2022 Wachusett Regional School District operating assessment.
Second.
A motion is made and seconded. Recommendation of the FinCon, please.
Finance Committee recommends favorable.
I don't know who came up first.
I did.
Mr.
Now,
Confield.
I will let,
You have a lady over here?
she takes my thunder, then I'll.
I'd like to say thunder. Jean Grant, 2 Sycamore Drive. I'm one of the library board of trustees. I have something to read. The Library Board of Trustees makes a motion to amend Article 4, increasing $20,682 to the library budget. This increase is needed to secure state certification. Certification is necessary for reciprocal privileges, which is borrowing books and other materials from other libraries, and for state aid. For example, our state aid in 2021 was $15,000. This state aid is necessary to balance the library budget because each year the approved library budget has been in a deficit. The library is an essential part of our community. The librarian and staff go above and beyond, helping residents with their needs to be able to access materials, have meetings, or events. The library has been continually active and at the forefront throughout the pandemic, remaining open, circulating 2,500 materials per month, continually hosting 7,000 people per month for the vaccine clinic. As the state begins to open and loosen restrictions, the library will continue to work at capacity and reintroduce in-person programs and events and resume meetings. Dozens of groups use the library each month for meetings, including the Select Board and the Cable Group and many organizations. The schools also use the library. Lack of funding means an inability to be open, to pay our utilities, to hold meetings, or to get books to our citizens. So in summary, I'm asking, as a representative of the Library Board of Trustees, that we make a motion to amend Article 4 with an increase of $20,682 to the library budget. You can see that the budget there is $224,000. So I'm asking for it to go up to $244,000. If the override goes through, it goes to $251,000. But the thing is, we don't know if the override is going to go through. So I'm asking for that budget to be amended. Thanks.
Just clarification, this is an amendment, not necessarily a motion, is that correct?
Well, a motion to amend, you have to help me with that.
Okay, so from my perspective, it's an amendment to the motion that was already made. And if so, that needs to be in print and it needs to stand before the end of the evening, or else it's not valid. So we're gonna work on her amendment at the moment. So this has been.
Not a problem.
Thank you, Scott, you for understanding.
Very well.
So we have an amendment on the floor to simplify it, to increase the library budget by $20,000. Is there a second to this amendment?
Second.
Amendment has been seconded by, you need to know. Who seconded it? Mr. Neil Weiner. Just so she had it on record, thank you very much, Mr. Weiner. So an amendment has been made. We're going to have discussion on the amendment. And only the amendment at the moment, please.
Could the finance committee get a copy of what you handed to the finance committee, please? To the select board?
Is there any discussion on the amendment?
Yes. My name is Lou Connicchio. I live at 18 Blueberry Lane here in well, not here. This building is old. In Rutland, Massachusetts. I would get up and support the library increase. I realize that because of the worst piece of legislation ever passed in the history of Massachusetts, Prop 2.5, we're limited in the amount of money we can raise without override. An override is usually disastrous. But I think the library is a good cause. I know the library is used by many, many people. And I think that I am going to present an amendment myself. And my amendment is going to be worth around $9,000. So we're looking at $29,000 in the two amendments that are coming forward. But I still support this because I think the library is an important part of our community. And the more that it offers, the better and the richer our community is. So I stand in support of the $20,000.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment, Ron?
Yeah, thank you. I think we're going to have to talk about this. In terms of the whole broad budget, we're going to continue this discussion. First of all, as you see, the motion has, in the motion, about $237,872 cuts. And I think all of us would like all those cuts to go back, and somebody get up and make a motion to that degree, because personally, I don't like any of the cuts. But we have to have something called a balanced budget. We have to have revenues that equal expenses. And tonight, you just can't get up and vote to spend money that we don't have. So, you know, the motion could be to add money here and take away money there, but you can't give money to one place that doesn't exist. It has to balance. So, we have to look at that. I frankly like this amendment. I happen to like the amendment I know is going to come forward. But neither of those amendments make sense if we don't have revenues to balance it, or we don't cut in other places. To be clear, the Finance Committee and I worked really hard on this budget, and none of us like any of the cuts that we put forward. There's not a single cut here that we all were excited about. But the reality is, we had to make choices to get to that balanced budget. So it's not that I don't support the amendment. The amendment simply doesn't work without either some new revenue or some other cut in expense in order to get to a balanced budget. And if we get that amendment or the next amendment, at the end of the day, we gotta go back to something that the town's finances are balanced according to state law. So I just want to make that clear, because it's going to be a big discussion over every single cut that we make.
Warren, are you comfortable?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, through you. I just want to point out that the reason that there is no more room in this budget is because they've used every available portion of the levy. And that's why the override amounts are shown in that separate column, so that you can see what would be cut if the override doesn't pass. If we were to leave this meeting tonight with an unbalanced budget, it means that we will necessarily be back again for another town meeting, whether before July 1 or sometime shortly after that. So, and it also would cause the beginning of the next fiscal year to be difficult when it's already difficult.
So just because all of the cuts that we have there, this 237,000, would all be replaced in the budget if the override passes. That gives us the revenues to balance those expenses. Or we can find different expenses and give the money back to these areas. So that's the two ways to do this. There's just no other way to do it in order to get a balanced budget.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to answer the learned counsel of the town administrator, if I may. In terms of the library, we have, I believe, I was told by a member of the finance board, there's $50,000 still in debt. So you could take 20 of that, and still have $30,000 left, and take care of the library. My issue, what I am going to bring forward, I believe you can find the money I'm looking for inside the existing budget without crippling the existing budget. There's ways of doing it, and I would address that when I get up for my particular motion. So we can satisfy the library without impacting the tax rate or making cuts in other departments. Now, granted, you don't like to tap into free cash. I was a selectman for 9 years. We were reluctant during that time, many times when I was a selectman, of tapping into it. But there were certain times we did tap into it, and everything worked out, because come October, when we recertified free cash at that particular point, we will probably have much more of that we can deal with. So I don't see it as gloom and doom. I know people, in positions in this town have to, you always think about the bottom line. But I think we can be creative and we can take care of the issues. I think her issue is an important issue, and I believe mine is extremely important, and I'm chomping at the bit waiting to come forward with mine.
Mr. Moderator, if I may, the way that the motion was made, it just increases the amount to be spent, and it makes no change in the funding sources. So if there was a desire to use free cash to fund this, it would have to be further amended.
Can I write it on there?
Let me just make sure I explain this, because again, this is going to be an issue we're going to talk about. So right now, I'm going to give you an approximate number, there's probably about $48,000 in free cash. I want to explain what that is. That's essentially a town savings account. At the end of the year, you have revenues, expenses. If you get a little bit more revenue than expenses that year, you get the savings, and that's free cash. It's a one-time revenue, but you don't know if you're going to get it in a future year. So that 40 grand is there. If we use it to fund an ongoing expense like we're talking about, next year we've set ourselves up for a deficit because we don't have taxation to pay for it. We use our savings account will pay that one-time expense. So we're gonna pass that buck into the next year and end up just pushing into a deficit situation for next year. Just so you understand what free cash is. It's not a recurring revenue, it's one time and then it's gone.
Moderator Peter Crane, Nate's Way. I'd like to understand if the override fails, what would the level of free cash be?
As of now, the balance of free cash is approximately $48,000. Certain free cash will be recertified around November, is that correct? There'll be a new certification of free cash for this year, so it'll be a totally different. We don't know what that number will be until the state certifies that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, that wasn't his question. His question was if the override passes on the 28th,
There'll be approximately $120,000 free cash.
120.
If the override passes.
The override passes about 120. If the override fails, 48, 40.
Right.
43.
The number is 43,264-ish. We're close. So everybody knows the number, it's 43,264. Right now, close we can be.
Is there any other discussion on this article?
So I would just like to add, that if my amendment doesn't go through, that people really consider the override, because the impact on the library, I mean, I hope people realize that you will not be able to get books from any other library in the state through interlibrary loan, because you're a Rutland resident and you have a library that's not certified. We lose certification, which means we also lose another $15,000 that we use for our budget all the time. We can't pay our utilities, which means we won't be open, which means we won't have meetings. So just really think about it. If this amendment doesn't go through, just really consider the override, because so many departments depend on that, and I would hate to see our library close.
Good evening, Elizabeth Hussey, 97 Toledo Road. I just would like to say in support of her and the library that all of these things we're talking about tonight have to do with priorities. And the library is something that this town has put tremendous investment into. And it's very personal to me because of my parents, but Helen and Elsa Hawkins. It would be a crime, in my view, to let the library slip through this funding mess. And just like she said, if we kind of ignore this, we could end up without a library, without the meeting rooms, without all the services the library provides, without the vaccine rooms and everything that happens there. It's at the bottom of the list. It's not a bottom priority. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment, Mr. Moderator? Are you finance or personnel?
I don't disagree with the library being there, but we've been trying to fund all of these. We don't want to make any of these cuts, but our priorities have tried to be that we fund the raises and the salaries of the dedicated town employees we have. And to Mr. Cracknoli's point, we try not to use free cash, as has been stated several times, that's our savings account, but the last several years we have used the savings account in order to try to get these small amounts in. And now we're at the point where that account is down to almost nothing, and it's hard to do. That's why we worked so hard over the months with the school changing their numbers to balance this whole budget. And we don't want to make any of these cuts, but we have to get to the point where the numbers come out with what the revenue is estimated to be so that we have a balanced budget. And that's where these numbers are at right at the moment. And the earlier question about the override, yes, the first override failed, but the selectmen chose to put a second override on it to 300,000 so that we can at least get some semblance of paying the bills that we think we should have for next year. All of the departments made cuts. We went back several times to everybody and asked, where can you cut? Where can you cut $100 up? Where can you cut whatever else? That's the work we did on this to get down to the numbers you're seeing here tonight. And we're asking that, with the numbers you see, that see an override either if we don't have to do it. We have, there's no option for us. Well, I'll say there is one option. We can go into our stabilization account, if that was the choice, but that's not a good route to go either.
Peter O'Malley, 143 Campbell Street. I support the woman's suggestion that go ahead and work on support the over. Nobody likes an over. Nobody likes to think about having to pay taxes. But the library is just one of many departments that are going to end up suffering, going to end up having to cut back. We've worked on a level funded budget, not a level of service budget. So things have gone down, gone back from where they were, just because we have to keep trying to keep the money the same. The override is a tough thing to do, and I'm sure everybody that went to the polls last time, they expressed what they thought. I don't want my tax. I hear it all the time. But you have to consider what you're going to give up. If you want to give it up, then you vote against the override. If you want these services to continue, I think you vote for the override. That's just my own personal opinion. I'm not talking to
On the amendment, Mr. Sacco.
Yes, just one quick point. The young woman said that if they don't get the additional money, did I hear correctly? Where did you go? That you will not be certified any longer? You'll be decertified. But you don't have to come down, just you'll be decertified. Right? Is that what I heard?
Yes. The library will lose certification from the state. We can apply for a waiver and get a small portion, but we will lose. We're not a certified library anymore.
Which is damaging to our library.
Yes.
A library which, by the way, just for you, I feel strong too because I was on the board of selectmen when we built that library. You know, I was at the meetings, we discussed it. So the library's very big. But let me ask the powers to be, how many other departments are going to lose their certification? DPW losing theirs, police losing theirs, fire losing theirs. Is anybody losing their certification? No. They are. We got stabilization, we got free cash. I don't like to spend free cash, but this is a chance, this is the time we should. We give her $20,000 and we worry about next year. I get really upset when people say, if we do something this year, what about next year? Well, we all live in our houses. We do that year after year. What's the big difference? Our town is just an extension of our house. Or our house is an extension of the town. I hope that you would support the library. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Does everyone understand what the amendment is? At this time, you can take your voters, make sure they're still on because it's been a little bit, and we're going to only vote on the amendment right now. All those in favor of the amendment, vote yes. All those opposed, vote no.
And there was no further amendment for free cash, so it's just raise and appropriate. It's not coming from free cash.
Lauren has just stated there was no amendment to the amendment. It wasn't declared to come out of free cash. It was just raised and appropriated.
Oh, wait, she offered to write it in.
She didn't write it in, sir.
Okay, well,
Offered.
can I make an amendment that the funds come from free cash?
You can't at this point.
That's okay. It's their job to figure out where the 20 grand comes from. If it's getting voted in. You don't have to tell them how to write it. Don't throw it. Don't throw a bunch of work.
We have a motion. If you'd like to put an extra amendment, Lauren says you can put it in at this time.
Yes, I would like to.
I'll second that motion.
So, Mr. Moderator, then we're adding such sum to be funded by free cash.
Is that what you'd like
Yes.
to do?
Yes.
And I believe I can do this. If everyone's okay with it on the general acknowledgement, we're just going to add that to the original amendment so we don't have to have two amendment votes.
Okay.
Under general consent, is everybody okay? So the amendments that she originally stated, she just added under general consensus that it's going to potentially, doesn't have to, potentially come out of free cash, is that correct? So it gives her a spot to get the funding from, because before, she had to put that into an amendment.
So we already voted, so what happens?
It has not closed yet.
Okay.
It has not closed, so if you want to change your vote, you can just hit a different button if you choose, okay? Mr. Viner, are you okay with that general consensus?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Viner. Thank you, Mr. Rochelle. So, everyone understands what's happening, and you have voted, and if you want to change your vote, you can still do it until I say close. So everyone's voted with the amendment, with potentially coming out of free cash. All those in favor, you did your green buttons. If you are opposed to that, you can do your red buttons. All those who voted who wish, I declare the ballot box closed. The amendment passes at 112 yeses, 40.
Oh, I'm sorry, 112, 44, and 2.
44 noes and 2 abstain. Motion carries. The amendment carries. So now, is there any other discussion on the original article? Mr. Cacchiola, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Moderator, I move. My original amendment had to do with the 8 secretary/administrative assistants, who are, in my opinion, again, as I told you, I don't want to belabor this, I was fortunate enough to be on the Board of Selectmen for 9 years, and I was involved in other parts of this community over the years. To me, the backbone of our community, or part of the backbone of our community, are secretary and administrative assistants. I know in the 9 years that I was in the Board of Selectmen, I was lost every day until I talked to Nancy or Jackie, and they put me in the right direction. So I know how valuable they are to this community. But I was also told, as I walked into this room tonight, that there were some other people who have not gotten a raise for this coming year. My understanding is those employees of our community, like DPW, police, fire, have received somewhere between a 2 and a 3% raise, is my understanding. But the secretaries, there's 8 of them, and my original calculation had, if we were to give them a 2.5% raise, would cost the town a little over $9,000. But the chairman told me that there are some other people who have not received raises. And if we were to include them, we're rounding that figure off now to around $14,000. In a 9 point something, as we heard earlier, $1 million budget. Again, 9 point something $1 million budget. I'm looking for about $9,000 to $14,000 to make these people whole and to say to them, thank you for working hard. And I imagine that they really worked hard this past year during this pandemic, that with everything being remote and so forth and so on, that it increased the amount of work that they had to do in dealing with the public in such a trying time. So my motion, and
Louis, let me help you. One thing before you get
correct.
Louis, your number should be 15,876.88.
And if you would, Mr. Ross, explain, besides the 8 secretary/administrative assistants, who would also come under what my amendment's going to say?
It's a 2% COLA raise for all non-contracted employees within the town of Rutland.
Non-union.
Non-contracted.
Contracted union. Okay. And
So
who,
that's-
besides the secretaries, I was only coming here because of the secretaries. I was told tonight that there are others, and I certainly don't want to. So can you give us who the other positions are? Mr. Moderator, for you, sir.
If I could. So there's 23 positions, non-union positions that right now, as the budget says, would not get the 2% cost of living raise. assistant town clerk, planner, economic development, administrative assistant for the TA, electrical inspector, assessors, administrative assistant, building inspector, board of health and building administrator, COA outreach, board's clerk, COA director, assistant treasurer collector, plumbing and gas inspector, veterans agent, DPW administrative assistant, DPW part-time administrator, police and fire administrator, 3 library aides, children's librarian, assistant librarian, and library director. Those positions are all non-union, non-contract.
So nine of those positions are the ones that I was coming before this party.
If the motion were to pass, the number that our finance board member gave, 15,876.88, all of those people would get raises again.
So let's,
The funding for that, so
put my amendment on the floor. This is fully off the code. It's kind enough to say to the second for me. When you want something second, you go to one of the power people here in town. Anyway, Mr. Moderator, I move we amend the Rutland Town Employee Wage Account in the following way. That the 23 positions that we just mentioned would be increased by 2%, which would be an overall figure of $15,876.88. Respectfully submitted to Louis J. Connick, 18 Blueberry Lane, Rutland, Mass.
Does this amendment have a second?
I second it.
Hey, say your name, please.
Marie Pugliato.
She willingly did that. Is there any discussion?
I'd like to speak.
Absolutely.
I'll keep it short.
Brief, please.
I'll shut up. Okay.
I fully understand the job that the Board of Selectmen have to do in the Finance Committee. I spent 9 years on the Board of Selectmen. I went through a lot of these budgetary discussions. I know what it's like. But I also know that we can be very creative in dealing with when we look at the budget. And we can move money and recoup money later on in the year, especially when we come to the fall, when we get the substantial amount of free cash. I think it's really a difficult thing for us to say, thank you for your help. By the way, because you're not in the union, you're not getting any money this year. I think our number one responsibility as taxpayers, as townspeople, as people who come to these meetings, is to support the people that work for us. The people that make this town the town that it is. They're the ones that work diligently every day. I know, I was on the front lines for 9 years. I saw how they work. And I strongly urge that you support this pay raise for these fine employees of our community, and we'll find the money. It's in the budget, it can be found. Thank you.
Is there any discussion on his amendment? Only his amendment, please.
Well, yes.
Okay.
Lizzie Lane. I appreciate all of what you just said, especially for the town employees. I stand up here, the last time I think I stood up here 3 years ago, and my blood pressure was as high as it is now. I'm still ready to come back in this room. However, although I appreciate that, the finance committee, the board of selectmen, the town administrator, and all of us employees have worked very diligently on this, and it seems like all these amendments are just adding back what they had to take out, and they didn't do it easily. This $9 million budget, okay, includes, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, 62% of it for the Wachusett School.
That's right.
Okay, however, we do the best we can. The town is growing, everybody's suffering. I work for the senior center. There are multiple things missing there. I can't even tell you, a teeny tiny budget, a huge amount of volunteers. But to give everybody something to reference, because I do stand up here, I talked to Dr. McCall 3 years ago, and I asked him to please work together. If you want an example that we can all relate to of working together, I suggest you think of the pandemic. And Chief Seth Knight, Scott Gilroy, Rich Stevens are the 3 people who took that challenge, who accepted every volunteer that helped in every town employee, and they didn't give half a vaccine to the seniors and 3/4 to the children. They worked together, so unless we all want to do this every single year, let's work together, because when we do, as you see, we accomplish great things, and that's exactly what happened. So I guess I need to get their advice, because they did a great job, hours and hours and hours, countless hours. They didn't complain, they used the resources that they had, they got grants. But this is enough. I mean, I don't want to be here, I don't know about the rest of you, and I appreciate everything you said, because guess what? Everybody works hard. I work for the municipality now. I have worked for the district. You know, we all want the best for the kids, for everyone, but let's be serious. Let's really have it for everyone, because when we work together, it actually comes together and it does work. This complaint it's got to stop. It's not going to get us anywhere.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Please proceed to the mic, please. If anybody's wondering, you know, we voted on 7 o'clock, that's gone. I was wrong.
Sharon O'Connor, Mount Sycamore Drive. I would like to know where this money is going to come from, if it's voted on. I mean, I'm told we don't have much in stabilization anymore. Where is it going to come from? That's why I recommend no, because we wait for the override. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Monitor, that was the point I was trying to make. You know, I know all of us would like to spend more money on things that we like, but if you can't go out and buy your car, you know, your money, you have to have the funds to do this. And what the finance board and I are trying to say is that we don't have the money in the budget. You're going to see it because of the budget just cut in the police department, cuts in the fire department. There's all kinds of cuts in departments all across the board, and none of them are alive. We did it because we didn't have the money.
And this one comes from stabilization.
Well, stabilization, people understand what stabilization is. The state of Massachusetts would like all towns to have 5% of their budget, what's called the stabilization fund. It's like an emergency crisis fund. If something went really bad. And you want to have that 5% in, because that's what, if you borrow money to build something, that's how you get a low bond rating when you go out to borrow money. So the stabilization fund right now in Rutland is right at 5%. If we were to take anyone out of stabilization and got to we had to borrow money for something, we would pay much higher interest rates. So you don't want to take money out of stabilization fund. The finance board and board of selectmen over the years, you're trying to build up that stabilization, get it to 5%. So we're sort of at the state minimum in terms of that account.
Didn't we just take 20,000 out of it?
No, we took it out of something called free cash. So free cash is, just so people understand, it's the difference, the end of the year is the difference between revenues and expenses. So if you have 50,000 more revenues than expenses, 50 grand goes into free cash.
What is there in free cash?
Well, that's what we were talking about before. Right now, if the override was to pass, it'd be about $120,000 in stabilization. If the override doesn't pass, we'd have a little over $40,000 on free cash. And a little over $40,000 in free cash. And we just took 20-something thousand of that $40,000 to the library. So free cash right now would be around $20-something thousand. Which wouldn't pay for the salary increases. Well, actually, it would pay. If we wanted to put free cash to zero, it would pay for that. And then we'd have no more free cash to talk about. We haven't gotten to the budget. And we're using one-time money to pay ongoing bills, which is a big problem for the town. We're trying to get away from that. And that's where it comes.
Last time. You just said the stabilization fund is the 5% emergency reward, okay? So if we take the money that's left in free cash, okay? We take the money left, pay for these employees. Now there's an issue comes up in the community. We have 5% of our budget called the stabilization fund. We tap into that. There's ways of doing this. Do not, 2 or 3 of us could sit down with that budget to come up with the 20 grand and shift it around and still be within where we should be, and we could be all right. And it's safe to the people that work for us. Thank you. But
Can I be all stay right there, please? Madam discussion.
Thank you, Frank.
Well, If I may, I'd like to make an amendment to Mr. Napoli's amendment to allow that money to come out, the rest of that money to come out of free cash. Can that be placed on there?
I'll accept that. I'll accept that.
That's your second, right there.
So if Mr. Cannacchioli's, if I'm hearing this right, we're gonna do it very similar to what we did in the library. Is Mr. Cannacchioli's original amendment, take it out of free cash. And if everybody's okay with it, I'll just do a general consensus of Mr. Cannacchioli's amendment will come out of free cash. Everybody's okay with that? Mr. Cannacchioli had those few words added in there. Acceptable?
Yes.
So we're still talking about Mr. Cannacchioli's amendment right now, Mr. Santos. Is the second okay with, she shook her head willingly, yes.
Mike Santos, 19 Watson Lane. Clarification question. If I understand this correctly, this is what we're voting on now. It's contingent upon the 2.5 override passing. Yes or no? No. It's not. Okay, thank you.
Brandon, Metro City, 85 place. I'm still a little concerned with what I'm hearing, because we're about to use all of our free cash, which is kind of one-time revenue. We're putting ourselves in a really bad position next year, and to Mr. County's point, we're worried about next year. That's how we got to this year, and that's a problem. The other point is that if we have 5% in stabilization, and there's an emergency, we have to use that, we dip under that 5%, that impacts the town's bond rate. So you're going to be paying either way, because if we have to borrow for any reason, we're paying a higher interest rate. Playing it at zero and trying to skirt by with nothing left in reserves is not the situation we want to be in. It puts us in a really bad position moving forward. Thank you.
Jen Ledger at 9 Drive. I support paying our townspeople what they would like and salary increases if it's in the budget. If what I'm hearing is it's not. I work for a company that pays me salary increases based on revenue. I didn't get a raise this year because of the pandemic. Sales were down, so I didn't get that. My company doesn't pay me a cost of living increase. I'm still doing my job because I have a job, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay still having a job and not getting a raise this year because they don't have the funds to do it. So while I do support paying people a raise, an increase, I think we need to do it when we have the funds and when it's appropriate. It may not be this year, maybe it's next year. We need to reevaluate, but we need to understand what was in the budget and make sure that we have the money to actually do that. And we're not saying we're not going to pay these people, it's just they're not going to necessarily get an increase this particular year.
Ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, if the override passes, these folks will get their raises.
That's the greatest thing in the world.
I didn't make comments to you, Mr. Cannavino. I appreciate you not doing the same.
Because that's all right, go on, was going to say the same thing Karen did, so please proceed with caution.
Michelle Van Turner Hill Road. I have a point of clarification. I have all due respect for the select board and for the finance committee and all of the time you've put together to put forward a balanced budget. But I do believe you put forward a balanced budget for us to approve or disapprove. And isn't that what we're doing right now? And having a discussion about how to spend this money. So while you guys have decided that this is the best way you think we should spend the money, what we're discussing here tonight is not trivial because it's our money that's being spent. And we should be able to spend it the way we want and have a little bit of wiggle room in here. So I understand and appreciate everything. I know how many hours you spend. But at the same time, I think people need to realize that that this is the last step of the process. We approve the budget. It's not up to you guys. You present the budget, but we're the ones that have to approve it. And I think, with all due respect, people need to be heard and not just, well, we've worked so hard on this and you just have to do what we say, but you have to listen to what people are saying too and what we need. We need a library. You know, I get it. We need things, but you also have to listen. I think you're preaching to the choir about the override here. The people here, I can't imagine that many people here won't vote on the override, but you really need to get more out there in terms of the general public that are going to vote on it. Thank you.
Is there any discussion on the amendment? discussion on the amendment? Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Does everybody understand what they're voting on? We're going to vote now. Make sure your buzzers are on. Green is yes for Mr. Canacciole's amendment. Red is no. Please vote now. Make sure you get no K's on your thing. All those voters who wish. I declare the ballot box closed. Ballot box closed. Motion is defeated. 109 noes, 41 yeses, 4 abstained. Motion, the amendment is defeated. We're going back on the original article, which is Article 4, with the motion that was already, the amendment that was already passed. Please, discussion.
She did on the best way. I do think it would be beneficial to the body.
Talk a little louder, please.
I do think it would be beneficial to the body to know what the original free cash number was. I don't think we've heard that yet. Exactly how much free cash was used in the balanced budget that's being presented tonight, and how much it sounds like it's being returned to it. Should the override pass, that's some fairly good information to know. I think also we probably all want to know if there was any strong consideration given to the use of our federal tax dollars that were being returned to the town through the American Rescue Plan that was passed in March by the federal government. That's fairly historic. And I think we all know from the news that there are some fairly stringent restrictions on how that money can be used, but whether or not that was considered, I think would be important. And finally, I have a motion to amend. On the budget as presented, I'd like to change line item 001-129-5110-0000 and move $4,665.77 to line item 001-210-5125-000 to replace police overtime wages. I'd like to move a portion of money totaling $47,895.32 to line item 001-421-5130-000 to highway wages, which will level funded from the 2021 number, and $8,900 to line item 001-220-5200-000 to fire purchase services, which will take care of the cut that was made to that line item as indicated in the document that we received. That is a total of $61,461.09. That leaves a total in the original number I noted of $58,681.91. While there are going to be questions, I'm going to proactively say this. This is the town administrator's salary, and I don't take cutting that line item lightly. We fought for 10 years to fill a created position with a town administrator, and I think we did it well. That said, in the position that we are in right now, with the needs this town has and the strength of the department heads, I do not see the value in cutting police, in cutting fire, and in cutting highway in the current year that we've had, particularly with police when we see what's going on, certainly around the state, if not around the country, with greater movement, greater activity, the need for more police services. That one in particular just hits me hard. I don't take this lightly. I do understand that this would essentially cut the town administrator's salary to be a half-time position. I understand that it would be difficult for the current board of 5, even with very good administrative assistance, but I do think with the help of the current very, very strong department heads that they have, that they can be able to do it and help to recover, as everyone was talking about. Thank you.
You've heard our amendment with a lot of numbers, but those are the line items, so everybody understands that. Sheila, we're going to need a copy of that. And we have a second for this.
I'll second it.
You'll second, Louis Canacciola is seconded first. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Sheila, you probably shouldn't go too far in case somebody has questions.
So, I'm not going to get into the town administrator, I'll let others speak to that issue. But she asked some questions about the American Rescue Act. I guess she asked a question that was really not part of the amendment. Would you
Are you okay if we don't answer? 'Cause I'd like to stay on topic of the amendment. We can answer that during open discussion on the article. Is that acceptable? I prefer not to confuse you.
Don, just trying to respond to the question.
Okay. So is there any discussion on, proceed with caution, there's a lady behind. Come on down, we'll give you time, please. There's somebody behind you, that's all. You're fine, you can go first.
Rachel Dolan, Ware Road. I'm not sure, but isn't the town administrator's position a contracted position? So, I don't know, legally, can we even do that at this point?
Who am I guess you used the word legal in the last council on that.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I haven't reviewed the contract, so I don't know what it says, but some contracts are subject to funding and some are not subject to funding. If it's not subject to funding, meaning that amount is paid no matter what, then you have to have another town meeting to come up with the funds to pay that. It'd be a contract action.
It's not subject to funding.
My question, Charlene O'Connor, 961. My question is, who are we going to get to be a part-time? I mean, we've had trouble getting a person. And I think that to say we're going to have a part-time, who? I think it's a little irresponsible. And I think that just sitting and waiting for an override and letting it go is a better choice. Instead of making big changes in the town meeting without having all the facts. Thank you. Thank you.
That was just a comment, I don't think you had a question there, right?
Well, I did. My question was,
Who to part-time?
how can we do part-time? I mean, you can't just tell somebody who's full-time and having a full-time salary, you're gonna go part-time and you're gonna have half the salary, because we're putting it to other places, and think they're gonna stay. I mean, has anybody spoken to this person to see if they're interested in the part-time? I mean, that's my question.
So, do you want Sheila to answer that? I hear or you want to say something?
No, I think we would be the only town, well, I know we're the only town in Washington region, without a full-time town administrator if the amendment goes through. And I just want to be clear, I mean, municipal government is becoming complex, and that's why the town's county's town administrator position, we work directly with all the department heads to make the cuts are bad, but we're suggesting we work with department heads. If we eliminate the town administrator position, that decimates town services. And part of the reason we're in this position today with the budget deficit we had was because of prior years of mismanagement, which we're now trying to correct. I don't think cutting the town administrator out of the budget or making it half-time, which quite frankly is not feasible for anyone that holds these positions, is the correct thing to do. It just must be that.
And I also think it's a little irresponsible to think that other people are going to take on someone's job when they're not trained for it and educated for it.
Sheila, can you can come down and answer if you want, but the finance would like to see the piece of paper that you physically of all the lines where the money's coming out of, to and from, please, they request it.
They need a copy.
Yeah, as long as it's done before the end of the evening, you like it now, Mr. Ross. Mr. Canacchioli, just a point of order that she has requested your amendment that is defeating, possibly to her shortly, please. Ms. Carlson, town clerk.
For her, and
Thank you, Mr. Canacchioli. Is there any other discussion on the amendment?
Yeah, Phil Brazzo, Maple Spring Drive. I just had a question. If the police department and fire department getting approximately 2% raise, is that correct? The non-contracted people are getting nothing, is that correct? If I'm reading this correctly, the town administrator's current salary is $105,500. maybe I'm not reading it correctly. It's 120, is that correct?
The contract is a 3-year contract, a fixed contract with the town administrator. The first year is 115, but you gotta remember, it starts in the middle of the fiscal year. So the 120 would be the balance of the contract amount over 3 years.
Okay.
So that is the 120.
And that is, I don't know what the percentage is, for that reason, is that what 2% raise per year?
No, the contract was negotiated, was 115 for the first year, and obviously different in the second and third years. The offer I took when the selectmen brought out the job, they put 115 plus or minus, and I agreed to take the 115, knowing it was a tough budget year, and got a larger raise in the second and third years.
Okay. How the non-contracted employees, how do they negotiate their salaries?
Non-contracting employees don't really get to negotiate their salaries. If they're not a union member, not a contractual employee, then the town's set, usually through, frankly, most of the time they get exactly what the union got in terms of the 2% across the wage there.
Right.
And if the budget was in decent shape, that's what I put forward, was a 2% budget increase for all non-union employees. When we started to have to make the cuts between the finance board and myself, we went through the difficult budget situation we're in, that was one of the cuts we had to make.
So some of these people, I would imagine they haven't had raises at all for quite a few years, or?
No, I think they did that, something that only there 6 months.
Yeah.
So you have to ask somebody else, but I think they did get a 2% bonus for the last couple of years, so, right? Not what you, some years yes, some years not?
No.
Some years yes, some years no.
Okay. So it varies from employee to employee?
Mostly union and non-union mostly, or there's some employees that are specifically contractual, they're not union but are contractual, usually that's the part.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment that's on the floor? Is there any other discussion on the amendment on the floor?
Darren Ross, 5 Business Park. So, if we vote this amendment, what happens to the town administrator tonight? I didn't know that before I voted. I don't know if we've had that clarification yet.
Mr. Myers. This is the budget for the next fiscal year, so July 1 is when this budget.
So July 1, either he renegotiates his contract, or the way his contract reads, we're gonna pay him for 5 months, because basically we're gonna fire him on July 1st, correct? Because his contract says we have to give him 2 weeks, 2 months notice, and then 3 months pay time. That's what his contract is, am I correct?
Mr. Moderator, I haven't looked at the contract. If the contract does not say that it's subject to funding, so it says that that's what the amounts are going to be, and this is how it's going to play out with X amount of months, then that would typically be the result. Right? Different contracts are written differently, so I don't want to commit to one interpretation. However, I can say that the amount of money that we're talking about right now would take effect on July 1. And so if there is something in the contract that says you need to give at least 2 months notice and 3 months after that, then you would be at 5 months.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Is there any other discussion? As a selectman or
If the override were to pass, does that make this account then whole?
which account?
Sorry, if the override were to pass, then would the town administrator's salary account then be whole? This is separate, right?
Mr. Moderator, if I may, and I think this is important just to understand the chart that's in front of people. The column on the far right, which is the column of the budget that the Finance Committee moved, includes all the override amounts, okay? So that's the budget that doesn't have additional cuts. If the override If the override were to fail, then everything in the column, the next column, which is, I can't even see, but the column that is labeled W at the very, very top, immediately to the left of the last column, then those amounts would be reduced. So those would be cut from the budget that's being presented to you tonight. Unless there's something in that override column, that the column that's one to the left of the last column, you're looking at W again. If it's not in the W column, then it's not subject to the override. If it is in the W column, then it is subject to the override. So the Finance Committee's recommendations, and I'm certain that they could talk to that, include what the number would be if there's no override, what the amount would be of the override, and then what the final budget numbers would look like with the override. And that's what's reported in that right-hand column.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment?
Nick Monaco, 10 Welch Ave, Police Chief. I had the distinct pleasure of being the acting town administrator between when Mr. Nicholson left and when Mr. St. Angelo came on board. And I can tell you that the amount of business that this town conducts, it cannot be a part-time position. I was out straight doing that along with being police chief, and to cut that down to a half, that's going to put more of a burden on the department and more of a burden on the selectmen that we can't sustain right now. So just throw that out there. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Hearing none. All those in favor of the amendment that's talking about moving money around. If you're in favor of the amendment, please vote with the green button. Make sure the gizmo's on. If you're opposed to the amendment, red, please. Ballot box is open. All voted who wish. Were you able to vote, sir, or did you break it first?
No, I'm okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Maybe you won't get another. All those voting who wish, I declare the ballot box closed. Motion is defeated. 123 noes, 32 yeses, 3 abstain. Motion is, the amendment is defeated. Now we're going to go back to open discussion for Article 4 with one amendment with it. Ron, would you like to speak of the list that she had spoke about? Maybe you remember.
Sure, yeah. The speaker was referring to something called the American Rescue Act. Most of you probably heard about these trillions of dollars the federal government is giving out to states and municipalities. The town of Rutland is actually slated for $881,783 at the end of the first round of revenues, and $1,733,470 later. The problem with this money is it can't be used for normal budgetary items. It's designed for specific types of things. It could help us in our water sewer in terms of the cost area, because it is allowed, the money is allowed to be used for upgrading water sewer accounts. So over the long term, we'll be able to use a significant amount of money for that. It also allows us to pay for low-income type housing, which we really just don't have any of. It allows us to use money for economic development, perhaps some tourism money. But the point of it is, it's again, one-time revenue. It's very spelled out in the federal law as to how we can use it. We're just looking at it now, but it clearly cannot be used for your normal operating budget. So that money has all kinds of strings attached. They formed a subcommittee to review that, to look at how we can use that money in the best way to benefit the town as a whole. But it's not going to help us in tonight's kind of issues. The Finance Board has been looking at this issue for some time as well. We were hoping hoping to use it for capital items, but even that is going to be highly unlikely. So as we examine this more, we're going to make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen to see how we go forward to spend that money. It will benefit the town, but not in the actual budget line items that we expect.
I feel that answered most of your questions. Is there any other discussion on Article 4? Is there any other discussion on Article 4? Is there any other discussion on Article 4? To clarify what you're physically voting on, is you're voting on Article 4 with one amendment that had previously passed, and that was the library $20,000 from free cash. The other two amendments that we voted on earlier did not pass, so we're not voting about those at all. We're only talking about the library and the article itself. Does everyone understand that? At this time, I will declare the ballot box open. All those in favor, please use green. All those opposed, red on the article with the amendment. All those voted who wish, I declare the ballot box closed. The motion carries at 130 yeses, 22 noes, 1 abstain. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 5. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of money to defray the expenses of the Southern Worcester County Regional Vocational School Assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021, and to determine whether the town will vote to appropriate the money, therefore to be provided by the taxation or by appropriation from available funds, and further to determine whether said appropriation or any proportion thereof shall be contingent upon approval by the voters at an election of the Prop 2.5 override question or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $678,340 to defray the expenses of the Southern Worcester County Regional Vocational School Assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021.
Second. Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of finance, please.
The Finance Committee recommends favorable.
Is there any discussion on this article? Wait, Mr. Gnocchioli, not to be a smart guy, you promised that was the last time you were talking.
On that issue.
Oh. I just wanted to at least check on you.
I had you in class, don't you remember I never gave up?
It was a few years ago.
I know, we were both involved in it.
Stay on focus here.
So I'm just a little bit confused as I'm getting older. I followed it at the beginning, and then in the doc print that says it's further determined whether said appropriation, blah, 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 contingent upon 2.5. Can somebody please explain what that means? Are we giving them money, or we have to wait for a 2.5 override before we give them money?
Mr. Moderator, for you, the article is giving notice of the possibility that it could be moved subject to an override. The motion just moves the sum for the school, no override, no contingency.
Is there any other discussion? Is there? Proceed with caution.
Chairman McConnell, Sycamore Drive, Rutland. Where does this money come from if the override fails?
This is not part of your override question, this is part of the one we allocated already within the budget. So it's a minimum, but it's a minimum requirement by the state that we have to get by the passed. But this is going to be funded part of taxation, and it has no variance or override.
So that, the thing where it says, contingent upon approval, that is not right?
That was not the way the motion was read, that was the way it was done in terms of the warrant. The motion specifically was just read to not include that language.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, through you, this is really a point of clarification. I just want to point out that the override amounts were in the budget. So that all of those budget items that showed up in that second column, all of that is what's subject to the override. So if the override fails, all those things become But so I'm just trying to let you understand that the override column is what was identifying what cuts would be made if the override passes. The override passes. So unless, even if we're approving something, if we're not saying subject to the override, then it's not subject to the override. Okay?
Then why do we?
Is there any other discussion? Is there any other discussion? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of Article 5, please vote green. All those opposed, red, please. Just waiting for the number to increase a little bit. All those voted who wish, or a few less than we had been. All those voted who wish, we got an okay. I'll declare the ballot box closed. Motion carries 127 yeses, 18 noes. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 6. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of money to defray the expenses of the Wachusett Regional School District minimum local contribution for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021, and determine whether the town will appropriate money therefore to be provided by taxation or by appropriation from the variable funds or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $7,671,887 to defray the expenses of the Wachusett Regional School District minimum local contribution for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021.
Does this motion receive support? Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of finance, please.
The Finance Committee recommends favorable.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by hitting your green buttons. All those opposed with the red buttons. All those voted who wish. I declare the ballot box closed. Motion carries at 105 yeses, 38 noes, 2 abstaining. Moving on to Article 7. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of money to defray the expenses of the Wachusett Regional School District debt service assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021, and determine whether the town will appropriate money therefore to be provided by taxation or by appropriation from available funds or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $551,886 to defray the expenses of the Wachusett Regional School District debt service assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021.
Second. Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of finance, please.
The Finance Committee recommends favorable.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by pressing the button, not raising your card. I'm sorry. All those opposed, with the red key. All those voted who wish. I declare the ballot closed. Motion carries at 113 yeses, 34 noes, 3 abstaining. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 8. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of money to defray the expenses of the Wachusett Regional School District Transportation Assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021, and to determine whether the town will appropriate money therefore to be provided by taxation or by appropriation from available funds or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,057,022 to defray the expenses of the Wachusett Regional School District Transportation Assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021.
Does this motion receive support? Motion made and second. Recommendation of finance, please.
Finance committee recommend.
I need another one of those people.
I'm sorry, Mr. Moderator. The finance committee recommends favorable.
Is there any discussion on this article?
Carolyn Seaman, 23 Billy Lane. This article bothers me in that the schools were closed for most of 20, part of 21. Where did the money go from this line item that wasn't used when the buses weren't in service?
Who would like? I believe there's a gentleman who could be from the school. Dan, I believe is from the school. I don't know who Dan is, but he's a businessman. He's a businessman.
Good evening, D&D Director of Business and Finance. So there was approximately half the year that the buses didn't run. We are in the process of negotiating what is called a readiness payment for those buses. And that'll be a percentage of the value for the days that the buses didn't run. The readiness payment is the end result of a request by the DESI to ensure that our transportation providers, both home to school, regular ed, but also special education as well, will be available for the district. And the importance of the readiness payment is that this helps us in the FY22 reimbursement for our transportation reimbursement for the 22 budget.
Okay, can I ask you, why are there so many buses assigned to the towns when they're not even used?
So as of now, we have 49 buses, and to my knowledge, I'm happy to have a separate sidebar discussion later on, that all 49 buses are being used at the fullest extent.
They're going to be used. Two students on this bus, one on that one, 13 on that one. I mean, somebody needs to look into this, because even though it's a regional system, and I know the system says there has to be a seat for every student that's within the regional system. You watch the cars line up at the school. The other day I counted 37. That's 37 students that are not getting on the bus. That's one school.
Through the moderator, again, one of the issues that we've encountered this year with the pandemic is that our ridership is down. There is an assumption that when we begin school in the fall, that our ridership will be back to what I would call pre-pandemic.
That's not true, because this goes on all the time before the pandemic.
So through the moderator, we're happy to look at those numbers.
I think somebody needs to take the bull by the horn and find out why the transportation budget has to stay where it is when it's not utilized.
I think I'm good. I don't know if she mentioned the question.
Gentleman, Joanna Dredd, just speaking to that, because as a parent with a child in the district, I elected not to put her on the bus when she went back to school this year, because I can't vaccinate her. I am now currently vaccinated. I am more comfortable with her, and she will be riding the bus come the fall for the next school year. I know I'm not the only parent that feels that way, and that has elected for this year to continue to drop off their child and pick them up.
This goes on every year for the last 5 years.
Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion on this article? All those in favor, please use the green button. All those opposed, red button, please. All those voters who wish, I declare the ballot box closed. Motion carries 88 yes, 53 noes, 1 abstain. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 9. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of money to defray the expenses of the Wachusett Regional School District operation assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021, and determine whether the town will appropriate money therefore to be provided by taxation or by appropriation from available funds and to determine whether said appropriation or any portion therefore shall be contingent upon approval by voters of the Proposition 2.5 override question or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $4,064,593 to defray the expenses of the Wachusett Regional School District Operations Assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021. And further, to raise and appropriate an additional sum of $300,000 for such purposes, provided, however, that such additional appropriation shall be expressly contingent upon approval by the voters at an election of a Proposition 2.5 so-called override, allowing the town to raise such amounts outside the otherwise applicable limits established by said Proposition 2.5.
Second. Motion made, second. Recommendation of the Finance, please.
Finance Committee recommends favorable.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please use the green button. All those opposed will be the red button. All those voters who wish, declare the ballot box closed. Motion carries, 79 yeses, 61 noes, 5 abstain. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 10. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of money as many be necessary to defray the expenses of the debt services for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021, and to determine whether the town will appropriate money therefore to be provided by taxation or by appropriation from available funds or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,107,035 to defray the expenses of the debt service for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021.
Second. Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of Finance, please.
Finance Committee recommends favorable.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by using the green button. All those opposed with the red button, please. All those voters who wish, either a few people have left or are falling asleep here. All those voters who wish, the number did change, folks. I declare the ballot box closed. 118 yeses, 23 noes, 0 abstained. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 20. Moving on to Article 11. To vote to see if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money to operate the water and sewer department for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021, or take any action thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53F and a half, to appropriate the total sum of $2,487,501.85 for the operation of the water sewer enterprise for fiscal year 2022, with $50,000 from the water sewer enterprise retained earnings and $2,437,501.85 from fiscal year 2022 receipts of the enterprise fund to be expended as set forth below. Salaries, $442,628.65. Expenses, $1,603,786. Debt principal, $160,000. Debt interest, $39,443.06. Reserve fund, $50,000. Indirect charges, $191,644.14. for a total of $2,487,501.85.
Is there a motion? Motion to receive support? Second. Recommendation of the finance, please.
Finance Committee recommends favorable.
Is there any discussion on this article? You gotta talk louder, or that light's not on, so the green light on.
Just wondering how much money comes in from the sewer fees and water bills and all that? And how does that offset or does it?
Karen, can you answer that to the best of your ability?
I'm looking to see if I have that.
Mr. Moderator, I'm sure Karen has a particular number, but essentially the water and sewer enterprises are paying for themselves, except that there's going to be, for this one, $150,000 from retained earnings. So of the whole amount, there will be $2,437,501.85 raised through rates.
So what if we were voting to extend or pay that we're not getting back? You know what I'm saying? We're voting to approve $2,487,000.
You're voting to expend that money to the water sewer operations, and your credited fees that you pay as part of your fees actually covers that cost of the rate of
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please use your green buttons. All those opposed, red buttons, please. All those voters who wish? We're a lot lower this time, John Wayne. We haven't had 20 people leave, have we?
No, probably 10.
All those voters who wish? We clear the ballot box? Wait a minute, I'm still moving, I'm sorry. All those voters who wish? I declare the ballot box closed. 111 yeses, 18 noes, 2 abstain. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 12. See if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money from the PEG Access and the Cable Related Fund to fund PEG Access and Cable Related operations for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021, and take further that at the close of the fiscal year to provide that all unspent funds shall be closed back to the PEG Access and Cable Related funds or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $133,000 to the PEG Access and Cable Related Fund to fund PEG Access and Cable Related operations for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021, and further that at the close of the fiscal year, provided that all unspent funds shall be closed back to the PEG Access and Cable Related Fund.
Second.
Motion made and second. Recommendation of finance, please.
The Finance Committee recommends favorable on this.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Hearing none, all those in favor, please vote by hitting your green button. All those opposed, red button, please. All those voters who wish, declare the ballot box closed. 117 yeses, 14 noes, 1 abstain. Motion carried. Moving on to Article 13. See if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021 2021 for the capital equipment, building, facilities, and other projects, and all incidental and related costs, including but not limited to equipping of vehicles and demolition, site preparation, site clearing, and authorize the select board to take by eminent domain, purchase, or otherwise acquire any fees, easements, by or interest in land necessary therefore, determine whether the funding shall be provided by the tax levy, by transfer or available funds, by borrowing, or any combination of these methods, and further to authorize the select board to apply for, accept, and expend any federal or state grant funds or private donations that may be available in such capital improvements, and as may be applicable to enter into contract or lease purchase agreements for a period of 3 or more years, and take such other actions as may be necessary to effectuate the vote taken hereunder or any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town authorize the select board to apply for, accept, and expend any federal or state grant funds for private donations that may be available for capital improvements, equipment, buildings, facilities, and other projects, and all incidental and related costs, including but not limited to equipping vehicles and demolition, site preparation and site clearing, and to authorize the select board to take by eminent domain, purchase, or otherwise acquire any fee, easement, or interest in land necessary therefore, and as may be applicable, to enter into contracts or lease purchase agreements of up to and in excess of 3 years that may be necessary or appropriate for the purposes authorized hereunder.
Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of finance, please.
Finance Committee recommends favorable.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? This will be a 2/3 vote, folks, when you choose to vote. Go ahead.
Sherry Hagerman, Olivia Lane. Just to understand, I know this is pretty typical that we answer this question, but with all the money that we will have coming in, the $2.3 billion, how are these decisions made on where that money is going to get spent? I do want the town to be able to spend this. I just want to know who's making that decision.
To you, Mr. Moderator. So right now, I formed a committee of some key department heads to look at how we should spend that money in the best interest of the town, and we would be making a recommendation to the board of selectmen for that decision to be made. So that's, we just started at our first committee meeting last week, and we'll be meeting to the next month to make that determination. But the board of selectmen actually makes the final decision as to how that money is going to be spent.
Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion? Just to clarify, this is not a 2/3 vote. This is just a majority because we're not spending any money. This clarification was on my notes. I do apologize. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by hitting the green button. All those opposed, red button, please. All those voted who wish. I declare the ballot box closed. Motion carries at 119 yeses, 9 noes, 2 abstain. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 14, to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to apply for, accept, and expand any grant or donation from state, federal government, or private agencies and individuals or institutions, or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to authorize the select board to apply for, accept, and expend any grants and donations from state or federal governments or private agencies, individuals, or institutions.
Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of the finance, please.
Finance Committee recommends favorable.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by hitting the green buttons. All those opposed with the red buttons. All those voted who wish, I declare the ballot box closed. 135 yes, 3 noes, 0 abstaining. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 15, to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to enter into a contract for goods and service with the duration in excess of 3 years under the provisions of GL Section 30B, subsection 12B, or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to authorize the select board to enter into contracts for goods and services with duration in excess of 3 years under the provisions of General Law, Chapter 30B, Section 12.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of Finance.
Finance Committee recommends favorable.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by hitting the green buttons. All those opposed will be the red buttons. All those who voted who wish, I declare the ballot box closed. 119 yeses, 12 noes, 4 abstaining. Motion carried. Moving on to Article 16, to see if the town will vote to appropriate all funds which become available in the fiscal year 2022 for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Highways, Chapter 90 bond issue proceeds to be used by the DPW for the repairs and maintenance of the town roads in conformance with Massachusetts general law, and further that the town will vote to raise and appropriate by borrowing and authorizing the town treasurer with approval of the select board to issue bonds or notes of the town, therefore, and anticipate of the receipt of said state aid or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to appropriate all funds which become available in the fiscal year 2022 from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Highways, Chapter 90 bond issue proceeds to be used by the DPW for the repair and maintenance of town roads in conformance with Massachusetts general laws, and further that the town vote to raise said appropriation by borrowing and authorize the town treasurer with approval of the select board to issue bonds or notes from the town, therefore, in anticipation of the receipt of said state aid.
Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of Finance, please.
Finance Committee recommends favorable on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please hit the green button. All those opposed, will be the red button. All those voted who wish, I declare the ballot box closed. 124 yes, 1 no. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 17, to see if the town will vote to pursue to the provisions of GL Section 44, subsection 53 and 1/2, as most recently amended in the established fiscal year 2022 spending limits for the revolving funds listed in Section 6 of the bylaw of the same name, all as set forth below, with such expenditures limited to be anticipated for each fiscal year until such time as town meeting votes prior to July 1 in any year to change the same for the ensuing fiscal year, provided, however, that at the request of the entity authorized to expend such funds, the select board, with the approval of the finance committee, may increase such limit for the fiscal year only as set forth below, which you have a chart in front of you, and I will not read.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote pursuant to the provisions of General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half, as most recently amended, to establish fiscal year 2022 spending limits for the revolving funds listed in Section 6 of the bylaw of the same being all as set forth below, with bold text showing an increased expenditure limit and with all such expenditure limits to be applicable for each fiscal year until such time as town meeting votes prior to July 1st in any year to change the same for ensuing fiscal year, provided, however, that at the request of the entity authorized to expend such funds, the select board, with the approval of the finance committee, may increase such limit for that fiscal year only, all as set forth below.
Does this motion receive support?
Mr. Moderator, if you could just say all is set forth in the warrant.
All is set forth in the warrant.
Still the second.
Still a second. Recommendation of the finance, please.
Finance committee still recommends it.
Great, thank you, Mr. Ross.
Mr. Moderator, if I may, I just want to point out that on our motions that the planning board is bolded at $75,000 in the article it's not, but that's the one that moves.
In simple English, could you explain what this is all about?
These are revolving funds. Essentially, think of it as it does not come from taxation. It's sort of user fees. So if you use the swimming pool, you go in, you pay a fee to use it, that goes into this revolving fund, and it pays expenses from there. If you're part of the Safe Place program and you pay a fee, it goes in. These
I
are all
understand all
programs.
about that. What are these powers that are going around the finance board and the select board can negotiate? Are we changing how we operate that? I understand where the money comes from.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
Mr. Moderator, that language is found right in the statute of chapter 44, section 53E and a half, and what it's meant to do is that if, for example, using the pool example, that there were many, many more users of the pool than anticipated, then in that fiscal, then there needs to be more money to spend for that reason, then the select board, with the approval of the finance committee, can raise the expenditure limit that we just voted on. And that's specifically authorized by state law.
I understand. Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please use the green button. All those opposed, red button. All those voted who wish, declare the ballot box closed. 118 yeses, 8 noes, 1 abstain. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 18, to see if the town will vote to accept Woodside Avenue and Sedona Circle as a town public way as laid out by the select board and recommended by the planning board, all as detailed below, to the authorized and select board to acquire by gift, purchase, or eminent domain land or rights in the land within said ways as laid out for all purposes for which public ways are used in the town of Rutland. The description is below. You will not hear that from me.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to accept Woodside Avenue and Sedona Circle as town public ways as laid out by the select board and recommended by the planning board. All as detailed in the warrant under Article 18, and authorize the select board to acquire by gift, purchase, or eminent domain land or rights in land within said ways and so laid out for all purposes for which public ways are used in the town of Rutland.
Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of the finance, please.
Finance committee recommends favorable on this item.
Planning board?
Mr. Moderator, the planning board recommends favorable action.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Hearing none, all those in favor, please use your green buttons. All those opposed, to the red buttons. All those voted who wish. I declare the ballot box closed. 101 yes, 30 noes, 3 abstain. Motion carried. Moving on to Article 19, to see if the town will vote to amend the town general bylaws water use restricted bylaw by inserting the following as the new section 10 and renumbering the remaining sections accordingly. Section 10, install of underground sprinkler devices after July 1st, 2022. Connection of underground sprinkler devices to the public water supply together with all the pipes. Pertinent thereto use the water outside and thereafter referral to the systems or extensions of existing systems will no longer be allowed after July 1, 2022. Above ground sprinklers attached to the hose and existing systems are specifically exempt from this provision of this section of the bylaw. So take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to amend the town's general bylaws, water use restriction bylaw by inserting the following as the new section 10, renumbering the remaining section accordingly. Section 10, installation of underground sprinkler devices after July 1, 2022. Connection of underground sprinkler device to public water supply together with all pipes and equipment thereto. Use the water outside areas hereafter referred to as system or systems or extensions of existing systems will no longer be allowed after July 1, 2022. Above ground sprinklers attached to hoses and existing systems are specifically exempt from the provisions of this section of the bylaw.
Second. Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of finance, please.
Finance Committee recommends favorable to that.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there?
I don't know how, sorry, Desiree Mingo, 10 Island Drive. I don't know how everyone's deciding, thinking about voting on this, but I just wanted to give my opinion, having moved here from a very dry area and seeing how people have sprinkler systems here and use them. We don't have a sprinkler system in our home, and it was a newer home. And our grass is always green, and we moved here from a dry area where people use sprinkler systems to keep the grass from becoming dead, basically. But here, you just don't need it flat out. It's just not necessary. The grass can be amended, it can have various things done to it here in this climate. And you don't need to continue to use the groundwater and the water that the whole town is using for watering the grass. But also, we see so often that those sprinklers are watering the pavement. And that happens all the time with these sprinkler systems, but watering the pavement is clearly not the best use of water. So I would hope that I could encourage everyone to vote yes on that article, because an existing system is not needed in this climate, and you can use sprinklers on and attach those to help your grass out and it works just fine.
Is there any discussion?
I believe the in-ground systems use less water than the other systems because of time. Also, I wonder if my existing system ever got into tree roots and had to be rerouted, if that would be allowed.
answer that.
Could you repeat the question, please?
She.
I have an existing system, but I have trees. If my roots were to interfere with my system and the system had to be moved, would that be allowed?
Mr. Buckley, are you stretching your legs or would you like to answer loudly?
I'll do my best to answer loudly. That's a simple repair of an existing system. This doesn't speak to that. The whole purpose behind the article or the adjustment as written is to stop the growth of systems, but it does not speak to existing systems. If you had to make a repair to an existing system, which may include rerouting, yes, that would be allowed.
It's not addressing the fact that the sprinkler system use less water than the regular sprinkler systems.
I could actually argue that too.
Mr. Buckley?
The town was asked to be able to take more water out of our reservoir and to stop the moratorium we had on future water connections, which actually helped the water revenues. The state asked us to put this on the ballot. They disagreed, I'm sorry. They truly believe that these should no longer be installed. It doesn't have to pass, but we signed a consent order and we were required to put it on the ballot.
My other statement is when you water your lawn with regular sprinklers, you're paying water and sewer. When you use a sprinkler system, you can bypass your sewer because it's not going. So it's a saving for those people using the in-ground.
Is there any other discussion? This gentleman's up first. Julie, go second.
I might have the same question as you. Peter Pacer, 20 Highland Park Road. I just had a question as far as the farmers in town, how that would impact them, if anybody can speak on that.
Do we have any farmers in town?
I don't think so. Mr. Buckley, you want to talk about the farmers?
It only affects anybody who's connected to the municipal water system. If the farmers are using their own water supply, it doesn't have anything to do with it, unless they're already buying water from us.
There was a comment in the back, and I prefer not to have it.
Irrigation system set up then, so would it affect them?
I still didn't take it.
Do they have irrigation system set up?
Who, the farmers?
Correct.
There's probably only one farm on municipal water. Town of Rutland. As far as I know, it doesn't have too many sprinklers.
Okay, you ready?
No, I'm not close enough to the center. You gotta come forward, but we can't hear you, you're pretty soft spoken.
Thank you.
As we're trying to attract businesses, a lot of businesses use underground sprinklers to water, such as nursing homes or other businesses. And we're trying to attract them to the property where the old Rutland hospital used to be. Are we shooting ourselves in the foot by saying, oh yes, you can come, but you can use a sprinkler? Because they don't want to have somebody there with holes or whatever.
I think you heard from Mr. Buckley, this is coming from the state, so every community would have that.
Jeez.
Oh, I'm sorry. Again, we live here in this climate. We don't have to use a sprinkler system at all. And our grass stays green, so if a business doesn't have a sprinkler system, just simply living in this climate with the natural rain we get, and mending the grass, the soil, whatever that we can do, it will stay green without a sprinkler system on it for a business.
Mr. Buckley?
Just to clarify, we signed a consent order. And the consent order basically gave us permission to take more water out of the reservoir so we could tie more homes and businesses. The state gave us a toolbox and some requirements in that. And one of them was to put this ordinance on the ballot. It doesn't have to pass for us to be in compliance with the consent order. We just have to have it on the ballot. It has to be in this format. for us to be compliant with the consent order. Which is basically, a consent order is a fancy word for saying a court order where everybody agrees to do something. They did it on purpose in the sense that if you use your water wisely, you'll be able to have you won't wipe out what you have in the reservoir that much quicker. That's all it's there. The state's pushed this all over the state. It's not mandatory right now. Again, we just had to have it voted on. It doesn't have to pass. That was our requirement. Thank you.
I just, Captain Jarvie, Hillside. Just a quick question. We talk about repairs. What about additions? What if somebody wanted to add on to an existing system that's not a repair, but it would be, they cleared a piece of land and they wanted to add to an existing system? Would that stop that as well? Somebody could add, another question, you could add on to an existing system, they give them a new system.
Yes. Does it say extensions? I'm sorry.
It does say, okay, that's all I know.
Redoing it around that big rock in the yard, go over there in the new area.
Leo, 3208 East County Road. I think something we need to consider for when we think about this article is we've heard from our water operators from DPW that our water system in town, for town water, is aging, and the repairs that could be needed in the forthcoming future are quite expensive. So using town water to water our lawns may not be the best financial decision for the long term, as well as the water resource that we have limited water supply. The pond is our only source.
Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion on this article?
Tom Harding, 89 Glenwood. I just wanted to point out that there are also soaker hoses which water fruit trees, berries, you name it, just fine. You can bury above ground systems and not see them in your mulch. But water is scarce, and as pointed out, our lawns stay pretty well clean anyway, so if you're worried about the center of your lawn, it's really not a concern around here. But as far as the trees and things you want to produce, you can actually very conservatively still water them with a soaker hose much more efficiently than you could do with a sprinkler anyway.
Is there any other discussion? Is there any other discussion? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by using the green button. All those opposed, red button. Make sure your transponder is awake. All those voters who wish, I declare the ballot box closed. 92 yeses, 40 noes, 3 abstain. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 20. To see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of MGL Section 32, subsection 4-2-B, which will allow the permanent members of the Rutland Fire Department who have worked as a reserve, permanent, intermittent, or call firefighter, and allow any town of Rutland employee previously rendered services as a reserve or permanent, intermittent police officer to purchase and receive credit for such service in the town of Rutland for each day actually worked beyond the 5 years that is currently allowed, or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 32, subsection 4-2B, which will allow permanent members of the Rutland Fire Department who work as a reserve, permanent, intermittent, or call firefighter, and allow any town of Rutland employee who previously rendered service as a reserve or permanent, intermittent police officer to purchase and receive credit for such prior service rendered in the town of Rutland for each day actually worked beyond the 5 years that is currently allowed.
Second. Motion made and second. Recommendation for finance, please.
The finance committee recommends favorably on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by using the green button. All those opposed will be the red button. All those voters who wish, I declare the ballot box closed. 121 yes, 11 no, 1 abstain. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 21, to see if the town will vote to increase the membership of the Historical Commission to consist of a total of 7 members, consistent with the MPL Chapter 40, Section 8E, and to authorize the select board to appoint one additional member to the term of 1, 2, or 3 years to the arrangement that the terms of approximately 1/3 of the members will expire each year or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to increase the membership of the Historical Commission to consist of a total of 7 members, consistent with the Mass Law Chapter 40, Section 18, to authorize the select board to appoint one additional member for a term of 1, 2, or 3 years, so arranged that the terms of approximately 1/3 of the members will expire each year.
Motion made and seconded. Recommendation, finance, please.
Finance Committee recommends favorable on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Miss, are you moving this way to speak?
I'm not.
Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion on this article? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by hitting the green button. All those opposed, with the red button. All those voted who wish, I declare the ballot box closed. 120 yes, 5 no, 0 abstain. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 22, to see if the town will vote to amend the town zoning bylaws by deleting the section 11A in its entirety to replace it with a new section 11A as set forth in the handouts entitled May 8, 2021 Annual Town Meeting, Proposed Zone Bylaw Change. Article 22 is also on file with the town clerk or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to amend the town zoning bylaw by deleting section 11A in its entirety and replacing it with the new section 11A as set forth in the handout entitled May 8, 2021 Annual Town Meeting, Proposed Zoning Bylaw Changes. Article 22 is also on file with the town clerk.
Second. Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of finance, please.
The Finance Committee recommends no action on this article.
Planning board, please.
Mr. Moderator, the planning board recommends favorable action on this article with the following amendment. Mr. Moderator, I move to amend Article 22 as follows. In the text of the article, delete all references to zoning board of appeals and insert in their place planning board.
Does this amendment receive support? Second. Amendment, the amendment has been made with a second. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion?
Elizabeth Hussey, 97 Turkey Road. I really am not knowledgeable on this, but I know that there's a lot of talk in the town that we need more business so that the weight of all the financing the town isn't on property owners. So I just don't understand like why the finance committee's recommending no action and the planning board is recommending positive action. Somebody could elaborate.
When we voted on this, we didn't have all of the information, so we voted no action because then that way, depending upon public meeting. At that point, it could have gone either way, and there's been no action, and that if the citizen's petition was not found favorable with the planning board, they can start over right away.
Ron, you want to expand on that?
If I can be simple, Chairman, planning board, what I said. To me, this makes a lot of sense, really, put it in a real fair kind of position. Currently, when there's an industrial zone, and so industrial zones is not allowed for commercial property. For instance, if something's zoned industrial, but it makes sense to have a restaurant there, it should be allowed, commercial property should be allowed. The current way it is, it doesn't allow for commercial property. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. For instance, say, restaurant couldn't go on Main Street, it was only zoned industrial, that doesn't make sense, a restaurant belongs on Main Street, right? This will allow, for those areas that are zoned industrial, to also have commercial. I think it's good, common sense, good for everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Moderator, point of order, aren't we discussing the amendment of the article?
I'm sorry. Is there any other discussion on the amendment? We're talking about the amendment.
I just wonder why the difference between the two boards. I don't understand why.
That question was, maybe I'm wrong, but that question was just answered.
Right, but I don't get it.
You don't understand why.
I don't. I mean, I heard the explanation, but I don't know why it couldn't be by both boards approval, because one is financial, but the other one is planning.
But that's really not amendment driven.
It may not be, but I'm wondering why you wouldn't want both boards
Well,
instead of changing it.
If I'm interpreting it correctly, the finance board said they didn't have all the information until the public hearings happened, so they paid a vote before. Their answer may be different if it was tonight than it was then.
So why are we voting on something when there's no understanding or no information?
Mr. Moderator, if I may, I think the question was about the amendment. Why the planning board instead of the zoning board?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that correct?
And why not vote?
So do you want to answer that, Mr. Planning Board? Please?
Most businesses that would occur in this industrial zone would require site plan review, site plan approval. The planning board already handles site plan review in most of the business type districts in Rutland, including the town center district, the village center district. We also are charged with site plan review for solar systems, wind systems, and wireless systems. There is a trend, that has been for a number of years, across the state to move site plan review to planning board from any other board, such as zoning board of appeals. We also discussed this with zoning board of appeals, and they have endorsed this amendment for the planning board to do this.
We have another question over here. On the amendment. Talking about the amendment. Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, we're going to vote on the amendment. So what Mr. Anderson just got up and spoke on the amendment. We're only voting on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? So the amendment is only majority. All those in favor, please signify by the green button. All those opposed of the amendment is the red button. All those vote who wish. I declare the ballot box closed. 106 yes, 15 noes, 8 abstain. Motion, the amendment carries. Now, is there any discussion on the article with the amendment?
Could we have a description of what parts of town are included in this light industrial office district?
Planning board? Should have had a nice colored map for it.
It's in the town hall.
It's in the town hall. We need to know that.
We actually have very, very few industrial districts. One of them is, of course, in Rutland Plaza. There is another section on Route 68 near the Holden line. And there's also a section along Route 68 near the Hudson line. There's also one on,
So by the sounds, there's very few. There may be one or two that he has forgotten, but relatively small areas.
it is all located on the zone.
Another question on the article?
It says that this is a citizen's petition, and I was wondering who made this petition and if they would speak to their intention.
Can you speak a little louder?
She wanted to know, where this is a citizen's petition, she wondered if those people would like to speak up.
It's totally up to them. The petitioner can speak on it, the motion's been made, he doesn't have to. If he'd like to, he has that ability to go on to the mic just as you.
Usually in the past, a citizen's petition is, the motion is read by them, so.
Exactly.
This is unusual for us. We don't, I don't know who it is, I don't know if it's here.
Well, if no one wants to take credit for it. I don't want to.
behind you.
George Carizzi, East County Road. I'm actually not the petitioner, I'm an attorney for Mr. Blair, who owns on industrial land in Rutland that this is designed to affect. It's the property at Rutland Plaza, looking to put in things like a restaurant or a retail store in that plaza in the current zoning. You can't do it, because industrial land is a very, very, very limited use space under the current zoning. Old zoning back before 2004 had a much more liberal land use for business uses. This changes nothing except adding some business uses to the industrial place, so you can put a restaurant on Main Street, so you can put a retail store on Main Street. You can put it all the way down in the town center district, in an industrial district, and it didn't make sense. So he put the petition in, he's asked me, I'm a resident of the town, he's asked me to speak on that. He's at a wedding, and he would have spoken to your question directly, but he said if somebody pops up with a question, he asked if I would cover it, so that's why.
Discussion on the article?
Yes, sir. Mike Sullivan, Crawford Road. Through you to the planning board, isn't the underlying zoning in all of town residential? So if somebody wanted to build a house in a commercially zoned piece of property or an industrial zone piece of property, they could do that, right?
Not in the industrial zone.
Okay.
Please stand so we can hear.
Okay, not in the industrial zone? Okay, and then if I may, to Mr. Fritzy, you said it was in the plaza. Are we really not talking about the old Sims Cab property?
Actually, both properties, both the Rutland Plaza and the Sims building are both part of the industrial zone. And then there are other sections in town, very small sections on the outskirts that are also industrial that have, you can use them for lumber yards, you can use it for warehousing, you can use it for a distribution center, for transportation hub, for UPS or something like that, but any other real business that probably would have an eye for those properties, they're boxed out under the current zone.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me to make perfect sense. I mean, just because it's zoned industrial and it's right adjacent to the plaza, and you know, I mean, for those who don't know, that used to be a manufacturing facility of, 150 people who work there every day. To not allow a restaurant to be there, but to allow a manufacturing plant just doesn't make sense. We're trying to promote business. I think a restaurant would be a fine thing to have there, so I would vote
discussion on this article? You're in this. I'm gonna have to let you sit a little closer to the mic.
Thinking that already Blair has started to redo part of that for the manual or ran KPs. So he did it probably before the permit was there. Also, I understand that one of the desires to put in that area is a marijuana facility. And I know it's coming out on the question, but that's where that's being looked at. So that's my thing, are we going to allow just anything? And I also think that if we want things put, we had all that property where the hospital was, that I believe is zoned for that kind of thing. Am I correct?
Dan, you want to answer the question?
I will defer zoning hospital properties to IBS.
I don't know if there's anybody here from RDIC that can speak on that.
The chairman said.
Oh, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Chairman, can you speak on behalf?
I'm not sure, I didn't hear the question.
She's asking why it's potentially the zone being changed if we can redirect the business to the RDIC property at the height potential.
So could you ask the question?
That's exactly what I was asking. Why are we looking to change what's existing when we have property that is relevant to that?
Well, I can't speak to what others want to do to their, with their property. But the
Is
hospital,
the hospital property zoned for a restaurant and whatever?
yes.
Would you like to speak on her question?
Just one comment that was made about work being done for a restaurant at that site without a permit or before a permit. There's been a variance granted by the ZBA on that. In fact, it was the ZBA who said, petition the town for a zone change so we don't do this. So this is necessary for the next business, like a flower shop or a retail store or anything that.
There was a flower shop there.
Probably, I know, prior to the zone change, 2004, so that was a pre-existing use. So there are certain protections for uses. So with the zone change in the early 2000s, that made those uses, the retail uses, no longer available. We went to ZBA said, petition for a zone change, so that this is an appropriate place for that kind of business.
But that's what started before the zoning change.
Permits have been issued and the variance was issued. We don't need a zone change to work under existing permits.
Now, the other question was, am I correct that that's where they're thinking of for the marijuana facility?
I can't answer that question, but I can tell you that they're looking for a zone change to bring in business uses, not just for the properties. It isn't in spot zoning. It's in all industrial zones, so that people who own land with a very, very narrow use set can then expand the uses so that it makes the land usable by those.
My problem with it is on the spot where the truck facility is down across from the plaza, that faces homes. There are homes across from that. So if we're going to allow a lot more, we're impacting people because the driveway comes out right across from homes. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion?
I'm Marilyn Sedoti from 48 Glenwood Road. I am also on the planning board, and I was also on the committee that drafted this current zoning bylaw. At the time that we did that, it made sense to us because Sims Tap was located in that building. As most of us know, they have since moved out. And at this time, myself and other people who drafted that original document have said, well, what were we thinking? This doesn't make any more sense. You know, it did, like 10, 15 years ago when we proposed that to this body. It made a lot of sense because there was industrial in the state, in that location at the time. However, we have no other industries have come to Rutland and said, boy, we would really like to work in that building. So at this point of time, it makes much more sense that be both rezoned so that it can be industry as well as commercial activity in that spot.
Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion on this article? So everybody knows this is Article 22. This is a 2/3 motion. And you're also voting on the article with the amendment that Mr. Anderson just read about a few minutes ago. So this is a 2/3. All those in favor, please signify by voting on the green button. All those opposed, will be the red button.
Yeah, it'll do the math, which is better. I don't know that I'd go with that. Well, it's obviously that. I don't think you get much more.
All those voting wish. Declare the ballot box closed. 101 yes, 30 no, 0 abstain. I declare it a 2/3 vote. Yes. Carried. Moving on to Article 23. To see if the town will vote to amend the town's zoning bylaw, Article 12, marijuana establishments, according to the document on file in the town clerk office, so the citizen petition or take any action in relation thereto.
I'm
You're making a motion,
I'm the petitioner of this change in this bylaw. One of the reasons the changes in this bylaw is to allow for liberal opportunities for.
You gotta make a motion first. No discussion.
Okay, what's three pages long? Oh, on the ballot? You mean on the warrant? Okay. I'm sorry.
Mr. Moderator, it could just be, I move to amend the town zoning bylaw according to the document on file with the town.
You know what she said?
Not entirely. I can read it, it's only a couple sentences long. Yeah. To see if the town will vote to amend the town zoning bylaw, Article 12, marijuana establishments, according to the document on file, the town's clerk office for citizen petition, or to take any actions in relation thereto.
Second. Well, no. First of all, you didn't address me. Second of all, you gotta make a motion. You gotta listen to what Lauren just said.
I'm sorry.
Please.
It needs to start off by, I move that the town vote to amend the town zoning bylaw, Article 12, marijuana establishments, according to the document on file with the town clerk's office for a citizen petition.
Second. So moved.
And Mr. Moderator, if I may.
Yes.
Mr. Moderator, if I may, I do also have a question about the content after this discussion, because it's not clear whether the underlying is new or old, so.
Motion's made and seconded by Mr. Clark. So he's got a question. She's got a question for you.
Okay, good.
I just wanted to confirm, did you mean to insert the underlying language?
Yes, the top parts, I guess, that are not underlined are what's currently on the bylaw. The change is for the bottom, I guess, the underlying portions. I believe so.
I see it now. Thank you.
Recommendation of finance, please.
Finance Committee recommends no action on this article.
Open for discussion.
Okay,
Planning board?
Planning board recommends no action on this matter.
Discussion now.
Okay, well, one of the reasons, when this bylaw was written, it put a lot of restrictions on what cannabis can come in.
You may want, Sean, you may want to drop the mic.
Oh, okay.
You don't need to sing it.
To make, well, the reason for the changes, Bob, is to make it a little more limited for companies to come into the town to, for the business that, of this industry. One of the main changes, which I want to make an amendment to this change, was to, right now, at the town, it only allows for one retail store, which throughout other towns in Massachusetts, they don't allow, which doesn't bring in the revenue that the other towns are getting, which at right now, currently Massachusetts is up to the $500 million mark that right now Rutland's not getting a part of. With the amendment I'd like to make to this town, and to this amendment, I believe, is that to allow, to equal the amount of liquor licenses that are in town, which I have a copy, I think. So I'd like to make an amendment to this first before we go on into the discussion.
So do you want to read the amendment?
The amendment,
Is it like out of 13 pages?
no, it's only one part of it. The portion I want to amend is on the third page, those you have it. Right now, that there is no limit to the amount of stores the town can have a job in the state. We want to create jobs in town. That the cap is on right now that it's 20% of the amount of liquor licenses. I moved to change equal the amount of liquor licenses in town, which gives fair opportunity for businesses, more businesses to come in, and that's pretty much it. I mean, it should be equal.
Does this amendment receive support? Amendment has been made and seconded.
Question for you, Mr. Moderator. So just so I'm clear, and I don't know how to answer it. Right now, you said there's one marijuana retail establishment allowed. And that's already been voted out as a host agreement for that. I don't know off the top of my head the number of liquor licenses, but I know it's significant. You're now saying that there could be as many retailers of selling marijuana as there are retailers of selling liquor. Is that your record?
Correct. Currently, right now there are six. Six liquor licenses in town, I believe.
You're proposing to go up to 6 marijuana retail establishments.
Correct. Which will allow to bring that much more revenue in town. And for example, Lester opened up their business, they made $4 million in 1 week. And that's taxable income to their town, which to allow that would allow more businesses opportunity. Right now, it just seems not a fair market to allow one retail store to kind of create a monopoly in town, which gives that company full benefit to Rutland. I mean, and to not allow another business to have any competition doesn't seem fair.
What's the population in Leicester?
Oh, I couldn't tell you.
Well, I think that would make a difference.
Well, see, the idea is it's not a host, it's not the amount of retail stores isn't on the amount of population. In the state doesn't require a certain amount of retail marijuana stores or any type of marijuana establishment, unless it's stipulated by the town itself. Rutland placed only one. Why they placed only one? I can understand. I can't answer that. But allowing only one does not allow the income that 2 or 3 or more can bring. And the town searching for money, the town wants businesses. I've been here for 8 years. I haven't seen market basket come in. I haven't seen any other businesses come in. You have a lot of businesses in this industry that would like to set up shop in Rutland that along with the taxable income that they bring, the community impact fees, we're talking a lot of money that can be brought into this town, that this town desperately needs. And the changes in this bylaw will allow, not only for that, but also the changes of the zoning will give places a little more equal opportunity. You can establish, well, like for cultivation, any farmer in town that would like to cultivate marijuana is not allowed to right now. And only one of the reasons is because farmers are in an area that's zoned, that cultivation is not zoned for. It makes perfect sense that if a farmer has the amount of property he wants to designate with growing weed to help his farm, to help the town, that's one of the changes that should be allowed. Right now, the way this bylaw is written does not give that landowner opportunity. But let's talk about the amendment first. That's what we're working on right now, right?
You bet, buddy. We run the show. You want to talk about the amendment?
I think so.
Well, it's more or less moving from 1 to 6.
Oh,
Would
yeah.
it equal?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
So if the town drops its liquor licenses, marijuana licenses would be dropped. Increases, it increases. So,
Is there a comment on?
On the amendment.
Oh, okay. Pause for a moment, please. Continue.
Mr. Moderator, I wasn't certain that this was actually even part of the bylaw. It says reasons for changes, so I thought it was an explanation. Is that supposed to be in the bylaw?
no, this handout is to give what's being changed and for reasons as well.
Okay.
The article itself, is also told to make that, to be specific.
Understood. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
On the amendment?
Yes, Chardonnay Martin, 190 Turkey Hill Road. So I completely disagree that we should have marijuana in retail stores here in Rutland. I moved from Worcester to Rutland intentionally because it's a quiet town, there's not much going on, let alone there's not Market Basket. I love Market Basket, but I don't want it here. So I personally don't think that there should be any additional marijuana retailers in Rutland.
We're talking on the amendment, please.
Peter Pacer, 20 Highland Crack Road. I think my stand would be the same, amended or not. I think there are much more important things than money, than revenue in this town. Much more important. We need revenue, yes, I understand that. But there are other ways of getting revenue. We just passed an amendment to the bylaw from Article 22. We can get revenue that way. We've expanded that option. We don't need it for marijuana. Imagine all that we're going to be getting, the tax on law enforcement. I mean, that's already been taxed enough in the environment that we're in, the budget environment that we're in. Post-agreement or not, we have people who bring families into town specifically for Wachusett. As far as I'm concerned, a world-class school system. Fantastic. They come in specifically for that. That's why we're getting people coming in. And we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot for a mere whatever number. And I mean, I don't know exactly the specific numbers, but I remember I was one of the ones who spoke against this when it first came out, this bylaw. And I remember somebody else was saying, I think it was like $70,000 a year for one of these establishments. That's all the town would get for one. Multiply that by 6, still not getting, still a drop in the bucket compared to 9 million. And this is not the cash cow that we're looking for.
Sullivan? discussion on the amendment?
Peter Crane, Nate's Way. I want to give it a little context before I describe why I'm voting down this amendment and in fact the entire bylaw. For context, at the time that this bylaw was written, I was sort of consultant for the bylaw committee, and most of the words in the bylaw came through these fingers. The decisions about the number of licenses were deliberated very strongly in the bylaw committee. And in the end, what the committee believed was that it is best to take a slow approach to accepting marijuana businesses in town. Not because they're evil, not in support of whatever money, but so that we could, over time, determine the effects on the town of the businesses. To date, we have 0 operating businesses in town. Yes, we have a couple of license agreements going through, and we will in time have them. No one is suggesting that the bylaw in its current form is perfect. But I'm voting it down because I think that we should not change the bylaw without more information. Thank you very much.
Who's on the amendment? She'll let her first, you second, if you don't want to talk on the amendment.
Hello, my name is Brandy, I live at 89 Glenwood Road. We moved to Rutland right before the pandemic. We moved here for the school district. We moved here because it did not have a marijuana shop. Mine opened one about 8 months before we moved out. And the traffic, the noise, the type of people brought to my area was a little upsetting. So when we heard that at this town meeting there was going to be possibly something from Blair coming up, and then maybe even more, I just don't believe it should be in our residential areas. And if people want to buy marijuana, I don't have a problem with it. Go to Gardner, go to Worcester, go to Pittsburgh. We're actually small business owners, and we do a lot of business in Rutland, but there's no space for us to put our business in Rutland either, and we are not selling marijuana. So I'm against it because I just don't think it would be great for the town. And I think it would cause a lot of problems with the town. Thank you.
Brendan Lorenzi, 23 Vista Circle. So, I understand that, it's difficult for a lot of people. We all grew up, marijuana was legal, and that was it. Right? A lot of people have moral problems with it, and a lot of negative associations with marijuana. Whatever, I've been curious, went to a dispensary, stood in line with a group of people who, the guy in front of me had a nicer suit than I would ever own in my life, right? There were nurses who had just gotten off work, guys in the lumber business, there were a couple of people who were exactly who you think would go to the dispensary on Friday. Not fooling anybody, but I think it's important to recognize that it's all walks of life who go and partake. It's completely legal. I understand wanting to take it slow, but I think it has to be recognized that it's a real business opportunity. We just spent how long talking about getting 20 grand for the library, getting some additional money for administrative assistance in this town. I don't, even if it is only $7,000 from one operating dispensary, that's not to sneeze at. I don't think that we can dismiss it out of hand. And going from having potentially one to having 6, when we can have one right now and we have none, I think it does represent a positive opportunity, positive upside. And again, I don't think it's something we can just dismiss.
You can get over there first, Jeff, he's not there. He's just gonna go first, take a second, talk right after, jump in.
Kevin Jones, Rutland Road. To the amendment, I have to agree with Mr. Crane. We don't have one yet, so to say, everybody keeps saying 6. I'm pretty sure there's more than 6 liquor licenses in the town of Rutland. I think it might be double for any business. It's not 6. Okay, we're talking 12, 13, 14. There's a lot of liquor licenses in the town of Rutland. So to equal that isn't 1 or 2. So walk before we run. Let's get our feet wet with one facility here in town and see how that goes. And bring it on.
Just one moment. Mr. Planning Board, do you have a comment about Kevin's probably number of permits, maybe?
I'd just like to clarify that the number of marijuana establishments is not controlled by the total number of liquor licenses. It does not include restaurants to serve. It is only liquor licenses in facilities that do not serve. So you're talking liquor stores, not just total liquor licenses.
Do you know how many liquor stores there are? 2.
According to what I just said, we believe, we didn't come prepared for this, but we believe there's 9 liquor licenses, of which 2 of them are liquor stores. That's what we know.
So according to Ron, if I'm interpreting this correctly, according to Mr. Moore, what he wants to do is increase it to the liquor license, which is a total of 2. Not 9.
No, there's 9 active liquor licenses for 2021, including 2 liquor stores. So it would be, as I understand it, it would be from 1 to 9. That's the way I
But if Mr.
That's
Anderson,
what state law says, it's not liquor.
all right. Either stand up, speak on the mic, and
Yeah,
talk about it.
I'm sorry, Mr. Nandolo, that the state says that stores that don't sell, like restaurants that have a liquor license, those do not count. Just straight liquor stores that have that type of liquor license.
So, Mr. Anderson.
It's correct.
It's potentially correct.
It is correct.
So, if Mr. Anderson and you were on the same page, and Ron is on a half page behind maybe, that you're going to bring your permit, to the best of your knowledge, to 1 to 2.
Yeah, I mean, if the town gets another liquor store, it will increase. If that town, if say 1 liquor store goes away, it will also decrease. So it's just to give equal opportunity from one devil's item to the other devil's item, one godsend to the other godsend. However you want to, it gives equal opportunity to business, which, I mean, we're supposed to give equal opportunity to employees.
So, maybe I shouldn't ask, I'm going to ask a question. Mr. Anderson said there's only 2, right? But I believe there's one at Blair Village, and there is one over in Four Corners area. And then, like, the marketplace can sell.
That's beer and wine.
That's different. That's different.
Beer and wine. There's no alcohol in it.
So it's going to be full, okay?
Let's get a full liquor license.
So yeah, this is all right, so let the young lady speak before you. I think there's some confusion, but I think the general knowledge is it's going to go from 1 to 2.
That's why it's called discussion.
I just wondered, since the planning board and the select board, everybody voted no action, is there any way we can vote for no action on this until there is more?
I believe the no action for you would be a no.
So we're going to defeat it in order to have no action. I mean, can it be postponed? Well, if we vote no action, it will just be brought up later. No.
Well, you want to speak, I mean, my interpretation, we're talking about the amendment. If you want to learn more about it.
Pass the whole thing, that there wouldn't be any reason to vote on the amendment.
No, we gotta vote on the amendment first. It's always, once an amendment's always worked on before the article. And if you would like to learn more information for this to come back for us at another meeting, you would potentially vote no on this, and then this could come back at another annual, or another town meeting to vote on it. So, again, the same thing as no action, but different. Correct, Warren, from point?
Where this is a petition article, if it were to come back, it would need to come back with the endorsement of the planning board. Within 2 years after that, it can come back again.
You understand that?
Yes, I just think there's so much information that's not here, and so much that's not known, I just don't feel that we're doing anything.
Are you speaking on the amendment?
Yes.
We're still talking about that, I think.
You're one of the new lane. Just to clarify, it seems like everything's a little confused at the moment. But according to what we have in front of us, it does not say liquor, full liquor license. It says retail sale of alcoholic beverages.
That, Mr. Moderator?
Yes, Warren.
It's from chapter 138 of the general laws, and that's how they say full liquor license. It's sale of the alcoholic beverages not to be drunk on the premises, and that's a full liquor license.
Okay, but does that not include beer and wine then, that is also not drunk on the premises?
Mr. Moderator, through you, it says retail sale of alcoholic beverages not to be drunk, so it doesn't say of malt and wine, it says alcoholic beverages, it doesn't distinguish.
All I'm saying is it feels like we're opening up Pandora's box.
Do we have any other questions or comments on the amendment? If it's simple, the amendment is just increasing the number equal to full liquor license.
Not like restaurants, not to be.
Not to be drunk on the premises. Is there any other discussion? Is there any other discussion?
Hello, my name is Jacob Palmer. I live at 289 Main Street. I want to say that I think that raising the amount of licenses is a bad idea. Even having one of these businesses in the town would be a bad enough idea. I've lived here my whole life, and I've always been, really proud of this town. It's the geographic center of Massachusetts, and I think because of that, we should try and be an example to the rest of the state. And not only are we the center of the state, we're the highest land between the ocean and the green and the mountains. And because of that, we've always had really clear air. That's why the Rutland Heights Hospital was built to treat tuberculosis. I think that if we build one or even more, up to 6 of these businesses, we're just going to pollute the air, and we're just going to take away what makes this town special. I think that we should be, I don't care how much money it brings in, we should think more about the repercussions of what it makes of our town. I think we should be careful what we bring in and what we make ourselves look like, the image of our town. So I just wanted to say that this whole license, that increasing the licenses is a bad idea, and even having even one is a bad idea. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Is there any other discussion? Just so you clarify, what you're voting on is just the amendment, just increasing the number from currently 1 to a full liquor license, which potentially could be 2. That's the amendment. All those in favor of the amendments, and that's just the majority on the amendment. Green for yes, red for no. All those who voted? All those voted? If so, I will declare the ballot box closed. No, 95, 0 abstain, 26 yes. Amendment is defeated. 13 people have gone home. Mr. Sullivan.
I have a very simple question. Why did the finance committee and the planning board vote no action? I mean, being the two governing bodies and Mr. Crane's already said he's not ready. I'd like to hear briefly why.
There wasn't a concise handout for us to be able to look at ahead of time, so therefore we voted no action.
Mr. Planning Board.
Well, when it comes to reasons, I think, I can only speak for myself, and certainly let any other members of the planning board speak for themselves. There were just a whole bunch of changes that were proposed in the bylaw change. And I guess one of the ones that just kind of struck me is allowing marijuana retail sales in residential zones. And to me, that is just totally defeating the concept of zoning. Open up a marijuana store, fine. You want to open up a doll's dress shop? No, you can't do it. And, you want to open a shoe shop? You can't do it.
And you should clarify that, Chairman, because if a dog shop would open up with 2 employees, are they allowed to open up in residential zone?
What shop?
A dog shop, like you said.
It's
not in town, good to have a home-based business, not 2 employees allowed.
Specifically as a home occupation?
Home occupation.
Which has restrictions on it.
Same as marijuana has restrictions on it. So your point is moot.
Moderator, you can't hear what they're saying. They're having a discussion.
I said that, he clarified that it is allowed in residential. It wouldn't really be different as a home occupation, because in the town of Rutland, you're allowed to have a home occupation, no matter what it is, if you have the amount of 2 employees. So, it's allowed.
Did you understand that? Jerry, did you understand that?
I hear it now.
Okay. Is there other
Move the question.
question has been moved? Has that been seconded? We will have all those, so to move the question, it eliminates the debate, but we have to vote on it. It has to be 2/3. So if this vote goes through and it passed on 2/3, then we end discussion, we go right to a vote. So right now, there is no discussion on moving the question. Are you ready for 2/3? So the question has been moved to eliminate or limit debate. All those in favor of eliminating debate on this, please vote green. All those opposed would be red. Guys are really putting the girl in the back that's controlling the computer station to testify to amendments and all the questions there. You're doing a really good job back there. Thank you. Holden tried to do the same thing there last time, and they weren't quite successful with their electronic petitions there before. So Holden. All those voted who wish. Motion carries 105 yes, 10 no, 1 abstain. So the question has been moved. I will call the article with no amendment. The article to vote. So we're voting on the citizens petition with no amendment. So we're not talking about the number of licenses, just the amendment of the changes in the bylaw. And this has to be 2/3 as well. You understand what we're voting on to the best of our ability? All those in favor, green. All those opposed, red. And this is 2/3 as well. All those who voted who wish. And the count ballot box closed. 96 noes, 4 abstained, 25 yeses. Motion is defeated. moving on to Article 24. All right, at this time, this is when I make the appointments for the Finance Board. We have 2 members of the Finance Board, or 3 members of the Finance Board that will have to be reappointed. This year, my appointments will be Karen Norwell has graciously agreed to stay on nicely. There are 2 other new members that will be filling 2 other positions that will be vacated. One member will be Alex Wolfett, and then the other one will be Lynn Winnicott, will be my 3 appointments for tonight on that. At this time, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'm not done talking yet, Mr. Ross. So, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Thank you for understanding here at the high school. I know we had some differences of opinion whether at the high school or not. I think it's worked out fairly well here. The air conditioning, comfortable seats. I think it's gone well. I'd like to thank everybody involved, whether it's the selectmen and the office staff, the finance board for working very hard. I thank you for coming.
Well, we are going back to Rutland this year.
Maybe.
Maybe. Come on. Rutland is Rutland. I understand the pandemic.
Mr. Ross, would you like to speak?
Before I make a motion to adjourn, I'd like to say that for our little town of Rutland, I'd like to thank the fire chief, the fire department, the board of health, and the council on aging for our little town of Rutland that we all came out tonight to support and go through the sometimes arduous process of this meeting. We gave out 50,000 vaccines to the town of Rutland.